Book 7. Juno served by a Fury. Part II. Amata's breast the Fury thus invades, And fires with rage amid the sylvan shades. Then, when she found her venom spread so far, The royal house embroil'd in civil war, Rais'd on her dusky wings she cleaves the skies, And seeks the palace where young Turnus lies. His town, as fame reports, was built of old By Danae, pregnant with almighty gold, Who fled her father's rage, and, with a train Of following Argives, thro' the stormy main, Driven by the southern blasts, was fated here to reign. 'Twas Ardua once, now Ardea's name it bears; Once a fair city, now consum'd with years. Here in his lofty palace Turnus lay, Betwixt the confines of the night and day, Secure in sleep. The Fury laid aside Her looks and limbs, and with new methods tried The foulness of the infernal form to hide. Propp'd on a staff, she takes a trembling mien; Her face is furrow'd, and her front obscene. Deep dinted wrinkles on her cheek she draws; Sunk are her eyes, and toothless are her jaws. Her hoary hair with holy fillets bound, Her temples with an olive wreath are crown'd. Old Chalybe, who kept the sacred fane Of Juno, now she seem'd, and thus began, Appearing in a dream to rouse the careless man: "Shall Turnus then such endless toil sustain In fighting fields, and conquer towns in vain? Win for a Trojan head to wear the prize? Usurp thy crown? Enjoy thy victories? The bride and scepter which thy blood has bought The king transfers, and foreign heirs are sought. Go now, deluded man, and seek again New toils, new dangers, on the dusty plain. Repel the Tuscan foes, their city seize, Protect the Latians in luxurious ease. This dream all pow'rful Juno sends; I bear her mighty mandates, and her words you hear. Haste, arm your Ardeans, issue to the plain; With fate to friend assault the Trojan train. Their thoughtless chiefs, their painted ships that lie In Tiber's mouth, with fire and sword destroy. The Latian king, unless he shall submit, Own his old promise, and his new forget. Let him in arms the pow'r of Turnus prove, And learn to fear whom he disdains to love; For such is Heav'n's command." The youthful prince with scorn replied, and made this bold defence: "You tell me, mother, what I knew before. The Phrygian fleet is landed on the shore; I neither fear nor will provoke the war. My fate is Juno's most peculiar care. But time has made you dote, and vainly tell Of arms imagin'd in your lonely cell. Go, be the temple and the gods your care; Permit to men the thought of peace and war." These haughty words Alecto's rage provoke, And frighted Turnus trembled as she spoke. Her eyes grow stiffen'd, and with sulphur burn; Her hideous looks and hellish form return; Her curling snakes with hissings fill the place, And open all the furies of her face. Then, darting fire from her malignant eyes, She cast him backward, as he strove to rise, And, ling'ring, sought to frame some new replies. High on her head she rears two twisted snakes; Her chains she rattles, and her whip she shakes, And, churning bloody foam, thus loudly speaks: "Behold, whom time has made to dote and tell Of arms imagin'd in her lonely cell! Behold the Fates' infernal minister! War, death, destruction, in my hand I bear. Thus having said, her smould'ring torch impress'd with her full force, she plung'd into his breast. Aghast, he wak'd, in starting from his bed; Cold sweat in clammy drops his limbs o'erspread. "Arms! arms!" he cries, "my sword and shield prepare!" He breathes defiance, blood, and mortal war. So, when with crackling flames a caldron fries, The bubbling waters from the bottom rise; Above the brims they force their fiery way; Black vapours climb aloft, and cloud the day. The peace polluted thus, a chosen band He first commissions to the Latian land, In threat'ning embassy; then rais'd the rest, To meet in arms th' intruding Trojan guest, To force the foes from the Lavinian shore, And Italy's endanger'd peace restore. Himself alone an equal match he boasts, To fight the Phrygian and Ausonian hosts. The gods invok'd, the Rutuli prepare Their arms, and warn each other to the war. His beauty these, and those his blooming age; The rest his house and his own fame engage. While Turnus urges thus his enterprise, The Stygian fury to the Trojans flies, New frauds invents, and takes a steepy stand, Which overlooks the vale with wide command; Where fair Ascanius and his youthful train With horns and hounds a hunting match ordain, And pitch their toils around the shady plain. The Fury fires the pack; they snuff, they vent, And feed their hungry nostrils with the scent. 'Twas of a well grown stag, whose antlers rise High o'er his front; his beams invade the skies. From this light cause th' infernal maid prepares The country churls to mischief, hate, and wars. The stately beast the two Tyrrhidae bred, Snatch'd from his dams, and the tame youngling fed. Their father Tyrrheus did his fodder bring, Tyrrheus, chief ranger to the Latian king. Their sister Silvia cherish'd with her care The little wanton, and did wreaths prepare To hang his budding horns; with ribbons tied His tender neck, and comb'd his silken hide, And bath'd his body. Patient of command in time he grew, and, growing used to hand, He waited at his master's board for food; Then sought his salvage kindred in the wood, Where grazing all the day, at night he came To his known lodgings and his country dame. This household beast, that us'd the woodland grounds, Was view'd at first by the young hero's hounds, As down the stream he swam, to seek retreat In the cool waters, and to quench his heat. Ascanius, young and eager of his game, Soon bent his bow, uncertain in his aim; But the dire fiend the fatal arrow guides, Which pierc'd his bowels thro' his panting sides. The bleeding creature issues from the floods, Possess'd with fear, and seeks his known abodes, His old familiar hearth and household gods. He falls; he fills the house with heavy groans, Implores their pity, and his pain bemoans. Young Silvia beats her breast, and cries aloud For succour from the clownish neighbourhood. The churls assemble; for the fiend, who lay In the close woody covert, urg'd their way. One with a brand yet burning from the flame, Arm'd with a knotty club another came. Whate'er they catch or find, without their care, Their fury makes an instrument of war. Tyrrheus, the foster father of the beast, Then clench'd a hatchet in his horny fist, But held his hand from the descending stroke, And left his wedge within the cloven oak, To whet their courage and their rage provoke. And now the goddess, exercis'd in ill, Who watch'd an hour to work her impious will, Ascends the roof, and to her crooked horn such as was then by Latian shepherds borne, adds all her breath. The rocks and woods around, and mountains tremble at the infernal sound. The sacred lake of Trivia from afar, the Veline fountains, and the sulphureous Nar, shake at the baleful blast, the signal of the war. Young mothers wildly stare, with fear possess'd, and strain their helpless infants to their breast. The clowns, a boisterous, rude, ungovern'd crew, with furious haste to the loud summons flew. The pow'rs of Troy, then issuing on the plain, with fresh recruits their youthful chief sustain. Not theirs a raw and unexperienc'd train, but a firm body of embattled men. At first, while fortune favour'd neither side, the fight with clubs and burning brands was tried. But now, both parties reinforc'd, the fields are bright with flaming swords and brazen shields. A shining harvest either host displays, and shoots against the sun with equal rays. Thus, when a black-brow'd gust begins to rise, white foam at first on the curl'd ocean fries. Then roars the main, the billows mount the skies, Till, by the fury of the storm full blown, The muddy bottom o'er the clouds is thrown. First Almon falls, old Tyrrheus' eldest care, Pierc'd with an arrow from the distant war. Fix'd in his throat the flying weapon stood, And stopp'd his breath, and drank his vital blood. Huge heaps of slain around the body rise; Among the rest the rich Galesus lies, A good old man, while peace he preach'd in vain, Amidst the madness of th' unruly train. 5 herds, 5 bleating flocks his pastures fill'd, His lands 100 yoke of oxen till'd. Thus, while in equal scales their fortune stood, The Fury bath'd them in each other's blood. Then, having fix'd the fight, exulting flies, And bears fulfill'd her promise to the skies. To Juno thus she speaks: "Behold, it is done! The blood already drawn, the war begun. The discord is complete, nor can they cease The dire debate, nor you command the peace. Now, since the Latian and the Trojan brood Have tasted vengeance and the sweets of blood, Speak, and my pow'r shall add this office more: The neighb'ring nations of th' Ausonian shore Shall hear the dreadful rumour from afar, Of arm'd invasion, and embrace the war." Then Juno thus: "The grateful work is done, the seeds of discord sow'd, the war begun. Frauds, fears, and fury have possess'd the state, And fix'd the causes of a lasting hate. A bloody Hymen shall th' alliance join Betwixt the Trojan and Ausonian line. But thou with speed to night and hell repair, For not the gods, nor angry Jove, will bear Thy lawless wand'ring walks in upper air. Leave what remains to me." Saturnia said. The sullen fiend her sounding wings display'd, Unwilling left the light, and sought the nether shade. In midst of Italy, well known to fame, There lies a lake, Amsanctus is the name, Below the lofty mounts. On either side Thick forests the forbidden entrance hide. Full in the centre of the sacred wood An arm arises of the Stygian flood, Which, breaking from beneath with bellowing sound, Whirls the black waves and rattling stones around. Here Pluto pants for breath from out his cell, And opens wide the grinning jaws of hell. To this infernal lake the Fury flies; Here hides her hated head, and frees the lab'ring skies. Saturnian Juno now, with doubled care, Attends the fatal process of the war. The clowns, return'd, from battle bear the slain, Implore the gods, and to their king complain. The corpse of Almon and the rest are shown. Shrieks, clamours, murmurs, fill the frighted town. Ambitious Turnus in the press appears, and, aggravating crimes, augments their fears. Proclaims his private injuries aloud, a solemn promise made, and disavow'd. A foreign son is sought, and a mix'd mongrel brood. Then they, whose mothers, frantic with their fear, in woods and wilds the flags of Bacchus bear, and lead his dances with dishevell'd hair, increase the clamour and the war demand. Such was Amata's interest in the land. Against the public sanctions of the peace, against all omens of their ill success, with fates averse, the rout in arms resort, to force their monarch, and insult the court. But, like a rock unmov'd, a rock that braves the raging tempest and the rising waves, propp'd on himself he stands. His solid sides wash off the seaweeds and the sounding tides. So stood the pious prince, unmov'd, and long sustain'd the madness of the noisy throng. But, when he found that Juno's pow'r prevail'd, and all the methods of cool counsel fail'd, he calls the gods to witness their offence, disclaims the war, asserts his innocence. "Hurried by fate," he cries, "and borne before a furious wind, we have the faithful shore. O more than madmen, you yourselves shall bear the guilt of blood and sacrilegious war. Thou, Turnus, shalt atone it by thy fate, and pray to heav'n for peace, but pray too late. For me, my stormy voyage at an end, I to the port of death securely tend. The funeral pomp, which to your kings you pay, Is all I want, and all you take away." He said no more, but, in his walls confin'd, Shut out the woes which he too well divin'd, Nor with the rising storm would vainly strive, But left the helm, and let the vessel drive. A solemn custom was observ'd of old, Which Latium held, and now the Romans hold. Their standard, when in fighting fields they rear Against the fierce Hyrcanians, or declare The Scythian, Indian, or Arabian war, Or from the boasting Parthians would regain Their eagles, lost in Carrhae's bloody plain, 2 gates of steel, the name of Mars they bear, And still are worship'd with religious fear. Before his temple stand, the dire abode, And the fear'd issues of the furious god Are fenc'd with brazen bolts. Without the gates the wary guardian Janus doubly waits. Then, when the sacred senate votes the wars, The Roman consul their decree declares, And in his robes the sounding gates unbars. The youth in military shouts arise, And the loud trumpets break the yielding skies. These rites, of old by sov'reign princes us'd, Were the king's office; but the king refus'd, Deaf to their cries, nor would the gates unbar Of sacred peace, or loose th' imprison'd war; But hid his head, and, safe from loud alarms, Abhorr'd the wicked ministry of arms. Then heav'n's imperious queen shot down from high; At her approach the brazen hinges fly, The gates are forc'd, and every falling bar, And, like a tempest, issues out the war. The peaceful cities of th' Ausonian shore, Lull'd in their ease, and undisturb'd before, Are all on fire; and some with studious care Their restive steeds in sandy plains prepare. Some their soft limbs in painful marches try, And war is all their wish, and arms the gen'ral cry. Part scour the rusty shields with seam, and part new grind the blunted axe, and point the dart. With joy they view the waving ensigns fly, and hear the trumpet's clangor pierce the sky. 5 cities forge their arms: the Atinian powers, Antemnae, Tibur with her lofty towers, Ardea the proud, the Crustumerian town. All these of old were places of renown: Some hammer helmets for the fighting field, Some twine young sallows to support the shield, The croslet some, and some the cuishes mould, With silver plated, and with ductile gold. The rustic honours of the scythe and share Give place to swords and plumes, the pride of war. Old falchions are new temper'd in the fires, The sounding trumpet every soul inspires. The word is given; with eager speed they lace The shining headpiece, and the shield embrace. The neighing steeds are to the chariot tied, The trusty weapon sits on every side. And now the mighty labour is begun: Ye Muses, open all your Helicon. Sing you the chiefs that sway'd the Ausonian land, Their arms, and armies under their command. What warriors in our ancient clime were bred, What soldiers follow'd, and what heroes led. For well you know, and can record alone, What fame to future times conveys but darkly down. Mezentius first appear'd upon the plain; Scorn sate upon his brows, and sour disdain, Defying earth and heav'n. Etruria lost, he brings to Turnus' aid His baffled host. The charming Lausus, full of youthful fire, Rode in the rank, and next his sullen sire. To Turnus only second, in the grace Of manly mien, and features of the face. A skilful horseman, and a huntsman bred, With fates averse 1,000 men he led. His sire unworthy of so brave a son, Himself well worthy of a happier throne. Next Aventinus drives his chariot round The Latian plains, with palms and laurels crown'd. Proud of his steeds, he smokes along the field; His father's hydra fills his ample shield; 100 serpents hiss about the brims. The son of Hercules he justly seems, By his broad shoulders and gigantic limbs, Of heav'nly part, and part of earthly blood, A mortal woman mixing with a god. For strong Alcides, after he had slain The triple Geryon, drove from conquer'd Spain His captive herds, and thence in triumph led On Tuscan Tiber's flow'ry banks they fed. Then on Mount Aventine the son of Jove The priestess Rhea found, and forc'd to love. For arms, his men long piles and jav'lins bore, And poles with pointed steel their foes in battle gore. Like Hercules himself his son appears, In salvage pomp; a lion's head he wears; About his shoulders hangs the shaggy skin; The teeth and gaping jaws severely grin. Thus, like the god his father, homely dress'd, He strides into the hall, a horrid guest. Then 2 twin brothers from the fair Tiber came, Which from their brother Tiburs took the name: Fierce Chorus, and Catillus, void of fear. Arm'd Argive horse they led, and in the front appear. Like cloud born Centaurs, from the mountain's height With rapid course descending to the fight, They rush along; the rattling woods give way, The branches bend before their sweepy sway. Nor was Praeneste's founder wanting there, Whom fame reports the son of Mulciber. Found in the fire, and foster'd in the plains, A shepherd and a king at once he reigns, And leads to Turnus' aid his country swains. His own Praeneste sends a chosen band, With those who plow Saturnia's Gabine land. Besides the succour which cold Aeneid yields, The rocks of Hernicus, and the dewy fields, Anagnia fat, and farther Amisene, A num'rous rout but all of naked men. Nor arms they wear, nor swords and bucklers wield, nor drive the chariot through the dusty field, but whirl from leathern slings huge balls of lead, and spoils of yellow wolves adorn their head. Their left foot naked, when they march to fight, but in a bull's raw hide they sheathe the right. Messapus next, great Neptune was his sire, secure of steel, and fated from the fire. In pomp appears, and with his ardor warms a heartless train, unexercis'd in arms. The just Faliscans he to battle brings, And those who live where Lake Cimenia springs, And where Feronia's grove and temple stands, Who till Fescinian or Flavinian lands. All these in order march, and marching sing The warlike actions of their sea-born king, Like a long team of snowy swans on high, Which clap their wings and cleave the liquid sky. When homeward from their watery pastures borne, They sing, and Asia's lakes their notes return. Not one who heard their music from afar Would think these troops an army train'd to war, But flocks of fowl, that, when the tempests roar, With their hoarse gabbling seek the silent shore. Then Clausus came, who led a num'rous band Of troops embodied from the Sabine land, And in himself alone an army brought. 'Twas he the noble Claudian race begot. The Claudian race, ordain'd in times to come To share the greatness of imperial Rome. He led the Curies forth, of old renown, Mutuscans from their olive-bearing town, And all the Eretrian powers, besides a band That follow'd from Velinum's dewy land, And Amiternian troops of mighty fame, And mountaineers that from Severus came, And from the craggy cliffs of Tetrica, And those where yellow Tiber takes his way, And where Himela's wanton waters play. Casperia sends her arms, and with those that lie By Fabaris and fruitful Foruli. The warlike aids of Horta next appear, And the cold Nursians come to close the rear, Mix'd with the natives born of Latine blood, Whom Allia washes with her fatal flood. Not thicker billows beat the Libyan main, When pale Orion sets in wintry rain, Nor thicker harvests on rich Hermus rise, Nor Lycian fields, when Phoebus burns the skies. Then stand these troops, their bucklers ring around, Their trampling turns the turf, and shakes the solid ground. High in his chariot then Halesus came, A foe by birth to Troy's unhappy name, From Agamemnon born. To Turnus' aid 1,000 men the youthful hero led, Who till the Massic soil, for wine renown'd, And fierce Auruncans from their hilly ground, And those who live by Cydonetian shores, And where with shoaly fords full Turnus roars. Cales and Osca's old inhabitants, And rough Saticulans, inur'd to wants. Light demi-lances from afar they throw, Fasten'd with leathern thongs, to gall the foe. Short crooked swords in closer fight they wear, And on their warding arm light bucklers bear. Nor, Oebalus, shalt thou be left unsung, From nymph Semethus and old Telon sprung, Who then in Teleboan Capri reign'd, But that short isle the ambitious youth disdain'd, And o'er Campania stretch'd his ample sway, Where swelling Sarnus seeks the Tyrrhene sea, Or Batulum, and where Abella sees, From her high towers, the harvest of her trees. And these, as was the Teuton use of old, Wield brazen swords, and brazen bucklers hold, Sling weighty stones, when from afar they fight. Their casques are cork, a covering thick and light. Next these in rank the warlike Ufens went, And led the mountain troops that Nursia sent. The rude Equicolae his rule obey'd, Hunting their sport, and plund'ring was their trade. In arms they plow'd, to battle still prepar'd. Their soil was barren, and their hearts were hard. Umbro the priest the proud Marrubians led, by King Archippus sent to Turnus' aid, And peaceful Olives crown'd his hoary head. His wand and holy words the viper's rage, Envenom'd wounds of serpents could assuage. He, when he pleas'd with powerful juice to steep Their temples, shut their eyes in pleasing sleep. But vain were Marsian herbs and magic art, To cure the wound given by the Dardan dart. Yet his untimely fate th' Angitian woods In sighs remurmur'd to the Fucine floods. The son of fam'd Hippolytus was there, Fam'd as his sire, and, as his mother, fair, Whom in Egerian groves Aricia bore, And nurs'd his youth along the marshy shore, Where great Diana's peaceful altars flame In fruitful fields, and Virbius was his name. Hippolytus, as old records have said, Was by his stepdam sought to share her bed; But, when no female arts his mind could move, She turn'd to furious hate her impious love. Torn by wild horses on the sandy shore, Another's crimes th' unhappy hunter bore, Glutting his father's eyes with guiltless gore. But chaste Diana, who his death deplor'd, With Aesculapian herbs his life restor'd. Then Jove, who saw from high, with just disdain, The dead inspir'd with vital breath again, Struck to the centre with his flaming dart Th' unhappy founder of the godlike art. But Trivia kept in secret shades alone Her care Hippolytus to fate unknown, And call'd him Virbius in th' Egerian grove, Where then he liv'd obscure, but safe from Jove. For this, from Trivia's temple and her wood Are coursers driven, who shed their master's blood, Affrighted by the monsters of the flood. His son, the second Virbius, yet retain'd His father's art, and warrior steeds he rein'd amid the troops, and, like the leading god, High o'er the rest in arms the graceful Turnus rode. A triple of plumes his crest adorn'd, On which with belching flames Chimaera burn'd. The more the kindled combat rises higher, The more with fury burns the blazing fire. Fair Io grac'd his shield; but Io now With horns exalted stands, and seems to low. A noble charge! Her keeper by her side To watch her walks, his 100 eyes applied, And on the brims her sire. The watery god Roll'd from a silver urn his crystal flood. A cloud of foot succeeds, and fills the fields With swords, and pointed spears, and clatt'ring shields, Of Argives, and of old Sicanian bands, And those who plow the rich Rutulian lands, Auruncan youth, and those Sacrana yields, And the proud Labicans with painted shields, And those who near Numician streams reside, And those whom Tiber's holy forests hide, Or Circe's hills from the main land divide, Where Ufens glides along the lowly lands, Or the black water of Pomptina stands. Last, from the Volscians fair Camilla came, And led her warlike troops, a warrior dame. Unbred to spinning, in the loom unskill'd, She chose the nobler Pallas of the field. Mix'd with the first, the fierce Virago fought, Sustain'd the toils of arms, the danger sought, Outstripp'd the winds in speed upon the plain, Flew o'er the fields, nor hurt the bearded grain. She swept the seas, and as she skimm'd along, Her flying feet unbath'd on billows hung. Men, boys, and women, stupid with surprise, Where'er she passes, fix their wond'ring eyes. Longing they look, and gaping at the sight, Devour her o'er and o'er with vast delight. Her purple habit sits with such a grace On her smooth shoulders, and so suits her face. Her head with ringlets of her hair is crown'd, And in a golden caul the curls are bound. She shakes her myrtle jav'lin, and behind Her Lycian quiver dances in the wind. Book 7.
Book 8. Arcadian Allies, Part 1. When Turnus had assembled all his powers, his standard planted on Laurentium's towers; when now the springly trumpet from afar had given the signal of approaching war, had roused the neighing steeds to scour the fields, while the fierce riders clattered on their shields, trembling with rage the Latian youth prepare to join the allies and headlong rush to war. Fierce Ufens and Messapus led the crowd, with bold Mezentius, who blasphemed aloud. These through the country took their wasteful course, the fields to forage and to gather force. Then Venulus to Diomed they send, to beg his aid Ausonia to defend, declare the common danger, and inform the Grecian leader of the growing storm. Aeneas landed on the Latian coast, with banish'd gods, and with a baffled host, yet now aspir'd to conquest of the state, and claim'd a title from the gods and fate. What numerous nations in his quarrel came, and how they spread his formidable name; what he design'd, what mischief might arise, if fortune favour'd his first enterprise, was left for him to weigh, whose equal fears and common interest was involved in theirs. While Turnus and the allies thus urge the war, the Trojan, floating in a flood of care, beholds the tempest which his foes prepare. This way and that he turns his anxious mind, thinks and rejects the counsels he design'd, explores himself in vain in every part, and gives no rest to his distracted heart. So when the sun by day or moon by night strike on the polish'd brass their trembling light, the glittering species here and there divide, and cast their dubious beams from side to side. Now on the walls, now on the pavement play, and to the ceiling flash the glaring day. It was night, and weary nature lull'd asleep the birds of air and fishes of the deep, and beasts and mortal men. The Trojan chief was laid on Tiber's bank, oppress'd with grief, and found in silent slumber late relief. Then thro' the shadows of the poplar wood arose the father of the Roman flood. An azure robe was o'er his body spread, a wreath of shady reeds adorn'd his head. Thus manifest to sight, the god appear'd, and with these pleasing words his sorrow cheer'd: "Undoubted offspring of ethereal race, O long expected in this promis'd place, Who thro' the foes hast borne thy banish'd gods, restore them to their hearths and old abodes. This is thy happy home, the clime where fate ordains thee to restore the Trojan state. Fear not, the war shall end in lasting peace, and all the rage of haughty Juno cease; and that this nightly vision may not seem th' effect of fancy, or an idle dream, a sow beneath an oak shall lie along, all white herself, and white her 30 young. When 30 rolling years have run their race, thy son Ascanius on this empty space shall build a royal town of lasting fame, which from this omen shall receive the name. Time shall approve the truth, for what remains, and how with sure success to crown thy pains. With patience next attend a banish'd band, driven with Evander from the Arcadian land, have planted here, and placed on high their walls. Their town the founder Pallanteum calls, deriv'd from Pallas, his great grandsire's name, but the fierce Latians old possession claim. With war infesting the new colony, these make thy friends, and on their aid rely. To thy free passage I submit my streams. Wake, son of Venus, from thy pleasing dreams; And when the setting stars are lost in day, to Juno's pow'r thy just devotion pay. With sacrifice the wrathful queen appease; Her pride at length shall fall, her fury cease. When thou return'st victorious from the war, perform thy vows to me with grateful care. The god am I, whose yellow water flows around these fields; it fattens as it goes. Tiber my name among the rolling floods, renown'd on earth, esteem'd among the gods. This is my certain seat; in times to come my waves shall wash the walls of mighty Rome." He said, and plunged below. While yet he spoke, his dream Aeneas and his sleep forsook. He rose, and looking up beheld the skies With purple blushing, and the day arise. The water in his hollow palm he took From Tiber's flood, and thus their pow'rs bespoke: "Laurentian nymphs, by whom the streams are fed, And Father Tiber, in thy sacred bed, Receive Aeneas, and from danger keep Whatever fount, whatever holy deep Conceals thy wat'ry stores, where'er they rise, And, bubbling from below, salute the skies. Thou king of horned floods, whose plenteous urn Suffices fatness to the fruitful corn, For this thy kind compassion of our woes Shalt share my morning song and evening woes. But oh, be present to thy people's aid, And firm the gracious promise thou hast made." Thus having said, to galleys from his stores With care he chooses, mans, and fits with oars. Now on the shore the fatal swine is found. Wondrous to tell, she lay along the ground, Her well-fed offspring at her udders hung, She white herself, and white her 30 young. Aeneas takes the mother and her brood, And all on Juno's altar are bestow'd. The following night, and the succeeding day, Propitious Tiber smooth'd his wat'ry way. He roll'd his river back, and pois'd he stood, A gentle swelling, and a peaceful flood. The Trojans mount their ships; they put from shore, Borne on the waves, and scarcely dip an oar. Shouts from the land give omen to their course, And the pitch'd vessels glide with easy force. The woods and waters wonder at the gleam Of shields, and painted ships that stem the stream. One summer's night and one whole day they pass Betwixt the greenwood shades, and cut the liquid glass. The fiery sun had finish'd half his race, Look'd back, and doubted in the middle space, When they from far beheld the rising tow'rs, The tops of sheds, and shepherds' lowly bow'rs, Thin as they stood, which then on homely clay Now rise in marble from the Roman sway. These cots, Evander's kingdom, mean and poor, The Trojan saw, and turn'd his ships to shore. 'Twas a solemn day. Th' Arcadian states, The king and prince, without the city gates, Then paid their offsprings in a sacred grove To Hercules, the warrior son of Jove. Thick clouds of rolling smoke involve the skies, And fat of entrails on his altar fries. But when they saw the ship that stemm'd the flood, And glitter'd through the covert of the wood, They rose with fear, and left th' unfinish'd feast, Till dauntless Pallas reassur'd the rest. To pay the rites, himself without delay A jav'lin seiz'd, and singly took his way. Then gain'd a rising ground, and call'd from far: "Resolve me, strangers, whence and what you are, Your business here, and bring you peace or war?" High on the stern Aeneas he stand, And held a branch of olive in his hand. While thus he spoke: "The Phrygians' arms you see, Expell'd from Troy, provok'd in Italy By Latian foes, with war unjustly made, At first affianced, then at last betray'd. This message bear: the Trojans and their chief Bring holy peace, and beg the king's relief." Struck with so great a name, and all on fire, The youth replies: "Whatever you require, Your fame exacts; upon our shores descend, A welcome guest, and what you wish, a friend." He said, and downward hasting to the strand, Embrac'd the stranger prince, and join'd his hand. Conducted to the grove, Aeneas broke the silence first, and thus the king bespoke: "Best of the Greeks, to whom, by fate's command, I bear these peaceful branches in my hand, undaunted I approach you, though I know Your birth is Grecian, and your land my foe. From Atreus, though your ancient lineage came, And boast the brother kings your kindred claim, Yet myself conscious worth your high renown, Your virtue thro' neither neighb'ring nations blown. Our fathers' mingled blood, Apollo's voice, Have led me hither, less my need than choice. Our founder Dardanus, as fame has sung, And Greeks acknowledge, from Electra sprung. Electra from the loins of Atlas came, Atlas, whose head sustains the starry frame. Your sire is Mercury, whom long before On cold Cylleni's top fair Maia bore. Maia the fair, on fame if we rely, Was Atlas' daughter, who sustains the sky. Thus from one common source our streams divide; Ours is the Trojan, yours the Aredian side. Rais'd by these hopes, I sent no news before, Nor ask'd your leave, nor did your faith implore. But come, without a pledge, my own ambassador, The same Rutulians, who with arms pursue The Trojan race, are equal foes to you. Our host expell'd, what farther force can stay The victor troops from universal sway? Then will they stretch their pow'r athwart the land, And either sea from side to side command. Receive our offer'd faith, and give us thine; Ours is a gen'rous and experienced line. We want no hearts nor bodies for the war; In council cautious, and in fields we dare." He said, and while spoke, with piercing eyes Evander view'd the man with vast surprise, Pleas'd with his action, ravish'd with his face, Then answer'd briefly with a royal grace: "O valiant leader of the Trojan line, In whom the features of thy father shine! How I recall Anchises! how I see His motions, mien, and all my friend in thee! Long though it be, 'tis fresh within my mind, When Priam to his sister's court design'd A welcome visit, with a friendly stay, And thro' th' Arcadian kingdom took his way. And then past a boy the callow down began To shade my chin, and call me first a man. I saw the shining train with vast delight, And Priam's goodly person pleas'd my sight. But great Anchises, far above the rest, With awful wonder fir'd my youthful breast. I long'd to join in friendship's holy bands, Our mutual hearts, and plight our mutual hands. I first accosted him, I sued, I sought, And with a loving force to Pheneus brought. He gave me, when at length constrain'd to go, A Lycian quiver and a Gnossian bow, A vest embroider'd, glorious to behold, And 2 rich bridles with their bits of gold, Which my son's coursers in obedience hold. The league you ask I offer as your right; And when tomorrow's sun reveals the light, With swift supplies you shall be sent away. Now celebrate with us this solemn day, Whose holy rites admit no long delay. Honour our annual feast, and take your seat, With friendly welcome at a homely treat." Thus having said, the bowls remov'd for fear, The youths replac'd, and soon restor'd the cheer. On sods of turf he set the soldiers round; A maple throne, rais'd higher from the ground, Receiv'd the Trojan chief, and o'er the bed A lion's shaggy hide for ornament they spread. The loaves were serv'd in canisters, the wine In bowls; the priest renew'd the rites divine. Broil'd entrails are their flood, and beef's continued shine. But when the rage of hunger was repress'd, Thus spoke Evander to his royal guest: "These rites, these altars, and this feast, O king, from no vain fears of superstition spring, or blind devotion, or from blinder chance, or heeded zeal, or brutal ignorance; but sav'd from danger with a grateful sense, the labours of a god we recompense. See from afar yon rock that mates the sky, about whose feet such heaps of rubbish lie, such indigested ruin, bleak and bare, how desert now it stands exposed in air! It was once a robber's den, inclos'd around With living stone, and deep beneath the ground The monster Cacus, more than half a beast, This hold, impervious to the sun, possess'd. The pavement ever foul with human gore, Heads and their mangled members hung the door. Vulcan this plague begot, and, like his sire, Black clouds he belch'd, and flakes of livid fire. Time, long expected, eas'd us of our load, And brought the needful presence of a god. Th' avenging force of Hercules from Spain Arrived in triumph from Geiron slain. Thrice livid the giant, and thrice livid in vain, His prize the lowing herds Alcides drove Near Tiber's bank, to graze the shady grove. Allured with hope of plunder and intent, By force to rob, by fraud to circumvent, The brutal Cacus, as by chance they stray'd, 4 oxen thence, and 4 fair kine convey'd. And lest the printed footsteps might be seen, he dragg'd 'em backwards to his rocky den. The tracks averse a lying notice gave, And led the searcher backward from the cave. Meantime the herdsman hero shifts his place, To find fresh pasture and untrodden grass. The beasts, who miss'd their mates, fill'd all around With bellowing, and the rocks restor'd the sound. One heifer, who had heard her love complain, Roar'd from the cave, and made the project vain. Alcides found the fraud, with rage he shook, And toss'd about his head his knotted oak. Swift as the wind's or Scythian arrow's flight, He clomb with eager haste the aerial height. Then first we saw the monster mend his pace, Fear his eyes, and paleness in his face. Confess'd the god's approach, trembling he springs, As terror had increased his feet with wings. Nor stay'd for stairs, but down the depth he threw His body; on his back the door he drew. The door, a rib of living rock, with pains, His father hew'd it out, and bound it with iron chains. He broke the heavy links, the mountains clos'd, And bars and levers to his foe oppos'd. The wretch had hardly made his dungeons fast, The fierce avenger came with bounding haste, Survey'd the mouth of the forbidden hold, And here and there his raging eyes he roll'd. He gnash'd his teeth, and thrice he compass'd round With winged speed the circuit of the ground. Thrice at the cavern's mouth he pull'd in vain, And panting thrice desisted from his pain. A pointed flinted rock, all bare and black, Grew gibbons from behind the mountain's back. Owls, ravens, all ill omens of the night, Here built their nests, and hither wing'd their flight. The leaning head hung, threat'ning o'er the flood, And nodded to the left the hero stood, Adverse with planted feet, and from the right Tugg'd at the solid stone with all his might. Thus heav'd the fix'd foundation of the rock, Gave way; heav'n echoed at the rattling shock. Tumbling it choked the flood on either side, The banks leap backward, and the streams divide. The sky shrunk upward with unusual dread, And trembling Tiber divided beneath his bed. The court of Cacus stands reveal'd to sight, The cavern glares with new admitted light. So the pent vapours with rumbling sound Heave from below, and rend the hollow ground. A sounding flaw succeeds, and from on high The gods with hate beheld the nether sky. The ghosts repine at violated night, And curse th' invading sun, and sicken at the sight. The graceless monster, caught in open day, inclos'd, and in despair to fly away, howls horrible from underneath, and fills his hollow palace with unmanly yells. The hero stands above, and from afar plies him with darts and stones and distant war. He from his nostrils' huge mouth expires black clouds of smoke amidst his father's fires, gath'ring with each repeated blast the night, to make uncertain aim and erring sight. The wrathful god then plunges from above, and where in thickest waves the sparkles drove their lights, and wades thro' fumes and gropes his way, half singed, half stifled, till he grasps his prey. The monster spewing fruitless flames he found; he squeezed his throat, he writhed his neck around, and in a knot his crippled members bound. Then from their sockets tore his burning eyes; roll'd on a heap the breathless robber lies. The doors, unbarr'd, receive the rushing day, and thorough lights disclose the ravish'd prey. The bulls, redeem'd, breathe open air again; next by the feet they drag him from his den. The wond'ring neighbourhood with glad surprise behold his shagged breast, his giant size, his mouth that flames no more, and his extinguish'd eyes. From that auspicious day, with rites divine, we worship at the hero's holy shrine. Potitius first ordain'd these annual vows; as priests we added the Pinarian house, who rais'd this altar in the sacred shade, where honours ever due for ever shall be paid. For these deserts, and this high virtue shown, we warlike youth your heads with garlands crown. Fill high the goblets with a sparkling flood, and with deep draughts invoke our common god." This said, a double wreath Evander twined, and poplars black and white his temples bind; then brims his ample bowl with like design. The rest invoke the gods with sprinkled wine. Meantime the sun descended from the skies, and the bright evening star began to rise. And now the priest, Potitius at their head, in skins of beasts involv'd the long procession led, held high the flaming tapers in their hands, as custom had prescribed their holy bands. Then with the second course the tables load, and with full chargers offer to the god. The Salii sing, and cense his altars round with Saban smoke, their heads with poplar bound. One choir of old, another of the young, to dance and bear the burthen of the song. The lay records the labours and the praise, and all th' immortal acts of Hercules. First, how the mighty babe, when swathed in bands, the serpent strangled with his infant hands. Then, as in years and matchless force he grew, th' Oechalian walls and Trojan overthrew. Besides, 1,000 hazards they relate, procured by Juno and Eurystheus' hate. Thy hands, unconquer'd hero, could subdue the cloud-born Centaurs and the monstrous crew; nor thy resistless arms the bull withstood, nor the roaring terror of the wood. The triple porter of the Stygian seat, with lolling tongue, lay fawning at thy feet, and, seiz'd with fear, forgot his mangled meat. The infernal waters tremble at thy sight. Thee, god, no face of danger could affright, no huge Typhus, nor the unnumber'd snake, increas'd with hissing heads in Lerna's lake. Hail, Jove's undoubted son, an added grace To heav'n, and the great author of thy race! Receive the grateful off'rings which we pay, And smile propitious on thy solemn day." In numbers thus they sung above the rest. The den and death of Cacus crown the feast. The woods to hollow vales convey the sound, the vales to hills, and hills the notes rebound. The rites perform'd, the cheerful train retire. Betwixt young Pallas and his aged sire, the Trojan pass'd the city to survey, And pleasing talk beguil'd the tedious way. The stranger cast around his curious eyes, New objects viewing still with new surprise; With greedy joy enquires of various things, And acts and monuments of ancient kings. Then thus the founder of the Roman tow'rs: "These woods were first the seat of sylvan pow'rs, Of nymphs and fauns, and salvage men, who took Their birth from trunks of trees and stubborn oak. Nor laws they knew, nor manners, nor the care Of lab'ring oxen, or the shining share; Nor arts of gain, nor what they gain'd to spare. Their exercise, the chase, the running flood, Supplied their thirst; the trees supplied their food. Then Saturn came, who fled the pow'r of Jove, Robb'd of his realms, and banish'd from above. The men, dispers'd on hills, to towns he brought, And laws ordain'd, and civil customs taught. And Latium call'd the land, where safe he lay From his unduteous son, and his usurping sway. With his mild empire peace and plenty came, And hence the golden times did read their name. A more degenerate and discolour'd age Succeeded this, with avarice and rage. Th' Ausonians then, and bold Sicanians came, And Saturn's empire often chang'd the name. Then kings, gigantic Tybris, and the rest, With arbitrary sway the land oppress'd. For Tiber's flood was Albula before, Till from the tyrant's fate his name it bore. I last arriv'd, driving from my native home, By fortune's pow'r, and fate's resistless doom. Long toss'd on seas, I sought this happy land, Warn'd by my mother nymph, and call'd by Heav'n's command. End of Book 8, Part 1. Book 8, Arcadian Allies, Part 2. Thus walking on, he spoke, and shew'd the gate, Since call'd Carmental by the Roman state, Where stood an altar sacred to the name Of old Carmenta, the prophetic dame, Who to her son foretold th' Aenean race, Sublime in fame, and Rome's imperial place. Then chose the forest, which in after times Fierce Romulus for perpetrated crimes A sacred refuge made; with this the shrine, Where Pan below the rock had rites divine. Then tells of Argos' death, his murder'd guest, Whose grave and tomb his innocence attest. Thence to steep Tarpeian rock he leads, Now roof'd with gold, then thatch'd with homely reeds. A reverent fear, such superstition reigns Among the rude, ev'n then possess'd the swains. Some god they knew, what god they could not tell, Did there amidst the sacred horror dwell. Th' Arcadians thought him Jove, and said they saw The mighty Thund'rer with majestic awe, Who took his shield, and dealt his bolts around, And scatter'd tempests on the teeming ground. Then saw two heaps of ruins: once they stood Two stately towns, on either side the flood, Saturnia's and young Nicola's remains, And either place the founder's name retains. Discoursing thus, together they'd resort Where poor Evander kept his country court. They view'd the ground of Rome's litigious hall, Once oxen low'd, where now the lawyers bawl. Then stooping thro' the narrow gate they press'd, When thus the king bespoke his Trojan guest: "Mean as it is, this palace, and this door, Receiv'd Alcides, then a conqueror. Dare to be poor, accept our homely food, Which feasted him, and emulate a god." Then underneath a lowly roof he led The weary prince, and laid him on a bed. Then stuffing leaves with hides of bears o'erspread, Now night had shed her silver dews around, And with her sable wings embrac'd the ground. When love's fair goddess, anxious for her son, New tumults raising, and new wars begun, Couch'd with her husband in his golden bed, with these alluring words invokes his aid, and that her pleasing speech his mind may move, inspires each accent with the charms of love. While cruel fate conspir'd with Grecian pow'rs, to level with the ground the Trojan tow'rs, I ask'd not aid th' unhappy to restore, Nor did the succour of thy skill implore, Nor urg'd the labours of my lord in vain, A sinking empire longer to sustain. Tho' much I ow'd to Priam's house, and more The dangers of Aeneas did deplore. But now, by Jove's command, and fate's decree, His race is doom'd to reign in Italy. With humble suit I beg thy needful art, O still propitious pow'r, that rules my heart. A mother kneels a suppliant for her son; By Thetis and Aurora thou wert won, To forge impenetrable shields, and grace With fated arms a less illustrious race. Behold, what haughty nations are combin'd Against the relics of the Phrygian kind, With fire and sword my people to destroy, And conquer Venus twice in conquering Troy. She said, and straight her arms of snowy hue About her unresolving husband threw. Her soft embraces soon infuse desire, His bones and marrow sudden warmth inspire, And all the godhead feels the wonted fire. Not half so swift the rattling thunder flies, Or forky lightning flash along the skies. The goddess, proud of her successful wiles, And conscious of her form, in secret smiles. Then thus the pow'r, obnoxious to her charms, Panting, and half dissolving in her arms: "Why seek you reasons for a cause so just, Or your own beauties, or my love distrust? Long since had you requir'd my helpful hand, The artificer and art you might command, To labour arms for Troy; nor Jove nor fate Confin'd their empire to so short a date. And if you now desire new wars to wage, My skill I promise, and my pains engage. Whatever melting metals can conspire, Or breathing bellows, or the forming fire, Is freely yours. Your anxious fears remove, And think no task is difficult to love." Trembling he spoke, and, eager of her charms, He snatch'd the willing goddess to his arms, Till in her lap infus'd he lay possess'd Of full desire, and sunk to pleasing rest. Now, when the night her middle race had rode, And his first slumber had refresh'd the god, The time when early housewives leave the bed, When living embers on the hearth they spread, Supply the lamp, and call the maids to rise, With yawning mouths, and with half-open'd eyes, They ply the distaff by the winking light, And to their daily labour add their night. Thus frugally they earn their children's bread, And uncorrupted keep the nuptial bed. Not less concern'd, nor at a later hour, Rose from his downy couch the forging pow'r. Sacred to Vulcan's name an isle there lay, Betwixt Sicilia's coast and Lipare, Rais'd high on smoking rocks; and deep below, In hollow caves, the fires of Aetna glow. The Cyclops here their heavy hammers deal; Loud strokes, and hissings of tormented steel, Are heard around; the boiling waters roar, And smoky flames thro' fuming tunnels soar. Hither the father of the fire, by night, Thro' the brown air precipitates his flight. On their eternal anvils here he found The brethren beating, and the blows go round. A load of pointless thunder now there lies Before their hands, to ripen for the skies. These darts for angry Jove they daily cast, Consum'd on mortals with prodigious waste. 3 rays of writhen rain, of fire 3 more, Of winged southern winds, and cloudy store. As many parts the dreadful mixture frame, And fears are added, and avenging flame. Inferior ministers for Mars repair His broken axle-trees and blunted war, And send him forth again with furbish'd arms, To wake the lazy war with trumpets' loud alarms. The rest refresh the scaly snake that fold The shield of Pallas, and renew their gold. Full on the crest of Gorgon's head they place, With eyes that roll in death, and with distorted face. "My sons," said Vulcan, "set your task aside; Your strength and master skill must now be tried. Arms for a hero forge, arms that require Your force, your speed, and all your forming fire." He said. They set their former work aside, And their new toils with eager haste divide. A flood of molten silver, brass, and gold, And deadly steel, in the large furnace roll'd. Of this their artful hands a shield prepare, Alone sufficient to sustain the war. 7 orbs within a spacious round they close; One stirs the fire, and one the bellows blows. The hissing steel is in the smithy drown'd; The grot with beaten anvils groans around. By turns their arms advance in equal time, By turns their hands descend, and hammers chime. They turn the glowing mass with crooked tongs; The fiery work proceeds with rustic songs. While at the Limnian god's command they urge Their labours thus, and ply the Aeolian forge, the cheerful morn salutes Evander's eyes, And songs of chirping birds invite to rise. He leaves his lowly bed, his buskins meet; Above his ankles sandals sheathe his feet. He sets his trusty sword upon his side, And o'er his shoulder throws a panther's hide. Two menial dogs before their master press'd, Thus clad, and guarded thus, he seeks his kingly guest. Mindful of promis'd aid, he mends his pace, But meets Aeneas in the middle space. Young Pallas did his father's steps attend, And true Achates waited on his friend. They join their hands; a secret seat they choose. The Arcadian first their former talk renews. "Undaunted prince, I never can believe The Trojan empire lost while you survive. Command th' assistance of a faithful friend; But feeble are the succours I can send. Our narrow kingdom here the Tiber bounds; That other side the Latian state surrounds. Insults our walls, and wastes our fruitful grounds. But mighty nations I prepare to join Their arms with yours, and aid your just design. You come, as by your better genius sent, And fortune seems to favour your intent. Not far from hence there stands a hilly town, Of ancient buildings, and of high renown, Torn from the Tuscans by the Lydian race, Who gave the name of Caere to the place. Once Agyllina call'd, it flourish'd long, In pride of wealth, and warlike people strong, Till cursed Mezentius in a fatal hour Assum'd the crown with arbitrary pow'r. What words can paint those execrable times, The subjects' sufferings, and the tyrant's crimes? That blood, those murders, O ye gods, replace On his own head, and on his impious race. The living and the dead, at his command, Were coupled face to face, and hand to hand, Till, chok'd with stench, in loath'd embraces tied, The ling'ring wretches pin'd away and died. Thus plung'd in ills, and meditating more, The people's patience tir'd no longer bore. The raging monster, but with arms beset, His house and vengeance and destruction threat. They fire his place; while the flame ascends, They force his guards, and execute his friends. He cleaves the crowd, and, favour'd by the night, To Turnus' friendly court directs his flight. By just revenge the Tuscans set on fire, With arms their king to punishment require. Their num'rous troops, now muster'd on the strand, my counsel shall submit to your command. Their navy swarms upon the coasts; they cry to hoist their anchors, but the gods deny. An ancient augur, skill'd in future fate, with these foreboding words restrains their hate: "Ye brave in arms, ye Lydian blood, the flow'r Of Tuscan youth, and choice of all their pow'r, Whom just revenge against Mezentius arms, To seek your tyrant's death by lawful arms. Know this: no native of our land may lead This pow'rful people seek a foreign head." Awed with these words, in camps they still abide, And wait with longing looks their promis'd guide. Tarchon, the Tuscan chief, to me has sent Their crown and ev'ry regal ornament. The people join their own with his desire, And all my conduct, as their king, require. But the chill blood that creeps within my veins, And age, and listless limbs unfit for pains, And a soul conscious of its own decay, Have forc'd me to refuse imperial sway. My Pallas were more fit to mount the throne, And should; but he's a Sabine mother's son, And half a native: but in you combine A manly vigour, and a foreign line. Where fate and smiling fortune shew the way, Pursue the ready path to sov'reign sway. The staff of my declining days, my son, Shall make your good or ill success his own. In fighting fields from you shall learn to dare, And serve the hard apprenticeship of war. Your matchless courage and your conduct view, And early shall begin t' admire and copy you. Besides 200 horse he shall command, Tho' few, a warlike and well-chosen band. These in my name are listed, and my son As many more has added in his own." Scarce had he said, Achates and his guest With downcast eyes their silent grief express'd, Who, short of succours, and in deep despair, Shook at the dismal prospect of the war. But his bright mother, from a breaking cloud, To cheer her issue, thunder'd thrice aloud. Thrice forky lightning flash'd along the sky, And Tyrrhene trumpets thrice were heard on high. Then, gazing up, repeated peals they hear, And in a heav'n serene refulgent arms appear, Redd'ning the skies, and glitt'ring all around. The temper'd metals clash, and yield a silver sound. The rest stood trembling, struck with awe divine; Aeneas only, conscious to the sign, Presaged th' event, and joyful view'd above Th' accomplish'd promise of the Queen of Love. Then to th' Arcadian king this prodigy: "Dismiss your fear, belongs alone to me. Heav'n calls me to the war; th' expected sign Is giv'n of promis'd aid, and arms divine. My goddess mother, whose indulgent care Foresaw the dangers of the growing war, This omen gave, when bright Vulcanian arms, Fated from force of steel by Stygian charms, Suspended shone on high. She then foreshow'd Approaching fights, and fields to float in blood. Turnus shall dearly pay for faith forsworn, And corps, and swords, and shields on Tiber borne, Shall choke his flood. Now sound the loud alarms, And Latian troops, prepare your perjur'd arms." He said, and rising from his homely throne, The solemn rites of Hercules begun, And on his altars waked the sleeping fires; Then cheerful to his household gods retires. There offers chosen sheep th' Arcadian king, And Trojan youth the same oblations bring. Next, of his men and ships he makes review, Draws out the best and ablest of the crew. Down with the falling stream the refuse run, To raise with joyful news his drooping son. Steeds are prepar'd to mount the Trojan band, Who wait their leader to the Tyrrhene land. A sprightly courser fairer than the rest, the king himself presents his royal guest. A lion's hide his back and limbs infold, precious with studded work and paws of gold. Fame thro' the little city spreads aloud th' intended march amid the fearful crowd. The matrons beat their breasts, dissolve in tears, and double their devotion in their fears. The war at hand appears with more affright, and rises every moment to the sight. Then old Evander, with a close embrace, strain'd his departing friend, and tears o'erflow his face. "Would Heav'n," said he, "my strength and youth recall, Such as I was beneath Praeneste's wall! Then, when I made the foremost foes retire, And set whole heaps of conquer'd shields on fire; When Euryalus in single fight I slew, Whom with 3 lives Feronia did endue; And thrice I sent him to the Stygian shore, Till the last ebbing soul return'd no more. Such, if I stood renew'd, not these alarms, Nor death should rend me from my Pallas' arms, Nor proud Mezentius thus unpunish'd boast His rapes and murders on the Tuscan coast. Ye gods, and mighty Jove, in pity bring Relief, and hear a father and a king! If fate and you reserve these eyes to see My son return with peace and victory; If the lov'd boy shall bless his father's sight, If we shall meet again with more delight, Then draw my life in length; let me sustain, In hopes of his embrace, the worst of pain. But if your hard decrees, which, oh, I dread, Have doom'd to death his undeserving head, This very moment let me die, While hopes and fears in equal balance lie. While yet possess'd of all his youthful charms, I strain him close within these aged arms, Before that fatal news my soul shall wound." He said, and swooning sunk upon the ground. His servants bore him off, and softly laid His languish'd limbs upon his homely bed. The horsemen march; the gates are open'd wide, Aeneas at their head, Achates by his side. Next these, the Trojan leaders rode along; Last follows in the rear th' Arcadian throng. Young Pallas shone conspicuous o'er the rest; Gilded his arms, embroider'd was his vest. So from the seas exerts his radiant head The star by whom the lights of heav'n are led; Shakes from his rosy locks the pearly dews, Dispels the darkness, and the day renews. The trembling wives the walls and turrets crowd, And follow with their eyes the dusty cloud, Which winds disperse by fits, and shew from far The blaze of arms, and shields, and shining war. The troops, drawn up in beautiful array, O'er heathy plains pursue the ready way. Repeated peals of shouts are heard around; The neighing coursers answer to the sound, And shake with horny hoofs the solid ground. A greensward shade, for long religion known, Stands by the streams that wash the Tuscan town, Encompass'd round with gloomy hills above, Which add a holy horror to the grove. The first inhabitants of Grecian blood That sacred forest to Silvanus vow'd, The guardian of their flocks and fields, and pay Their due devotions on his annual day. Not far from hence, along the river's side, In tents secure, the Tuscan troops abide. By Tarchon led, now from a rising ground, Aeneas cast his wond'ring eyes around, And all the Tyrrhene army had in sight, Stretch'd on the spacious plain from left to right. Thither his warlike train the Trojan led, Refresh'd his men, and wearied horses fed. Meantime the mother goddess, crown'd with charms, Breaks thro' the clouds, and brings the fated arms. Within a winding vale she finds her son, On the cool river's banks retir'd alone. She shews her heav'nly form without disguise, And gives herself to his desiring eyes. "Behold," she said, "perform'd in ev'ry part, My promise made, and Vulcan's labour'd art. Now seek, secure, the Latian enemy, And haughty Turnus to the fields defy." She said, and having first her son embrac'd, The radiant arms beneath an oak she plac'd. Proud of the gift, he roll'd his greedy sight Around the work, and gazed with vast delight. He lifts, he turns, he poises, and admires The crested helm, that vomits radiant fires. His hands the fatal sword and corslet hold, One keen with temper'd steel, one stiff with gold; Both ample, flaming both, and beamy bright: So shines a cloud, when edg'd with adverse light. He shakes the pointed spear, and longs to try The plated cuishes on his manly thigh; But most admires the shield's mysterious mould, And Roman triumphs rising on the gold. For these, emboss'd, the heav'nly smith had wrought, Not in the rolls of future fate untaught, The wars in order, and the race divine Of warriors issuing from the Julian line. The cave of Mars was dress'd with mossy greens; There by the wolf were laid the martial twins. Intrepid on her swelling dugs they hung; The foster dam loll'd out her fawning tongue. They suck'd secure, while, bending back her head, She lick'd their tender limbs, and form'd them as they fed. Not far from thence new Rome appears with games Projected for the rape of Sabine dames. The pit resounds with shrieks; a war succeeds For breach of public faith, and unexampled deeds. Here for revenge the Sabine troops contend; The Romans there with arms the prey defend. Wearied with tedious war, at length they cease, And both the kings and kingdoms plight the peace. The friendly chiefs before Jove's altar stand, Both arm'd, with each a charger in his hand. A fatted sow for sacrifice is led, With imprecations on the perjur'd head. Near this the traitor Metius, stretch'd between, For fiery steeds is dragg'd along the green. By Tullus' doom the brambles drink his blood, And his thorn limbs are left the vulture's food. There Porsena, to Rome proud, Tarquin brings, And would by force restore the banish'd kings. One tyrant for his fellow tyrant fights; The Roman youth assert their native rights. Before the town the Tuscan army lies, To win by famine, or by fraud surprise. Their king, half threat'ning, half disdaining stood, While cockles broke the bridge, and stemm'd the flood. The captive maids, there tempt the raging tide, Scap'd from their chains, with Cloelia for their guide. High on a rock heroic Manlius stood, To guard the temple, and the temple's god. Then Rome was poor, and there you might behold The palace thatch'd with straw, now roof'd with gold. The silver goose before the shining gate There flew, and by her cackle sav'd the state. She told the Gauls' approach; th' approaching Gauls, Obscure in night, ascend, and seize the walls. The gold dissembled well their yellow hair, And golden chains on their white necks they wear. Gold are their vests; long Alpine spears they wield, And their left arm sustains a length of shield. Hard by, the leaping Salian priests advance, And naked thro' the streets the mad Luperci dance. In caps of wool, the targets dropp'd from heav'n, Her modest matrons in soft litters driven, To pay their vows in solemn pomp appear, And odorous gums in their chaste hands they bear. Far hence remov'd, the Stygian seats are seen, Pains of the damn'd and punish'd Catiline. Hung on a rock the traitor, and around The Furies hissing from the nether ground. Apart from these, the happy souls he draws, And Cato's Holy Ghost dispensing laws. Betwixt the quarters flows a golden sea, but foaming surges there in silver play. The dancing dolphins with their tails divide the glitt'ring waves, and cut the precious tide. Amid the main two mighty fleets engage; their brazen beaks oppos'd with equal rage. Actium surveys the well-disputed prize; Leucata's wat'ry plain with foamy billows fries. Young Caesar, on the stern, in armour bright, Here leads the Roman and their gods to fight. His beamy temples shoot their flames afar, And o'er his head is hung the Julian star. Agrippa seconds him with prosp'rous gales, And with propitious gods his foes assails. A naval crown that binds his manly brows The happy fortune of the fight foreshows. Rang'd on the line opposed, Antonius brings Barbarian aids, and troops of Eastern kings. Th' Arabian near, and Bactrians from afar, Of tongues discordant, and a mingled war. And rich in gaudy robes, amidst the strife, His ill fate follows him, th' Egyptian wife. Moving they fight with oars and forky prows; The froth is gather'd, and the water glows. It seems as if the Cyclades again Were rooted up, and justled in the main; Or floating mountains meet: Such is the fierce encounter of the fleet. Fireballs are thrown, and pointed jav'lins fly; The fields of Neptune take the purple dye. The queen herself, amidst the loud alarms, With cymbals toss'd, her fainting soldiers warms. Fool as she was, who had not yet divin'd Her cruel fate, nor saw the snakes behind. Her country gods, the monsters of the sky, Great Neptune, Pallas, and Love's queen defy. The dog Anubis barks, but barks in vain, Nor longer dares oppose th' ethereal train. Mars in the middle of the shining shield Is grav'd, and strides along the liquid field. The deer resolves from heav'n with swift descent, And Discord, dyed in blood, with garments rent, Divides the prease; her steps Bellona treads, And shakes her iron rod above their heads. This seen, Apollo from his Actian height Pours down his arrows, at whose winged flight The trembling Indians and Egyptians yield, And soft Sabaeans quit the wat'ry field. The fatal mistress hoists her silken sails, And, shrinking from the fight, invokes the gales. Aghast she looks, and heaves her breast for breath, Panting, and pale with fear of future death. The god had figur'd her as driving along By winds and waves, and scudding thro' the throng. Just opposite, sad Nilus opens wide His arms and ample bosom to the tide, And spreads his mantle o'er the winding coast, In which he wraps his queen, and hides the flying host. The victor to the gods his thanks express'd, And Rome triumphant with his presence bless'd. 300 temples in the town he plac'd, With spoils and altars ev'ry temple grac'd. 3 shining nights, and 3 succeeding days, The fields resound with shouts, the streets with praise, The domes with songs, the theatres with plays. All altars flame; before each altar lies, Drench'd in his gore, the destin'd sacrifice. Great Caesar sits sublime upon his throne, Before Apollo's porch of Parian stone; Accepts the presents vow'd for victory, And hangs the monumental crowns on high. Vast crowds of vanquish'd nations march along, Various in arms, in habit, and in tongue. Here Mulciber assigns the proper place For Carians, and th' ungirt Numidian race. Then ranks the Thracians in the second row, With Scythians, expert in the dart and bow. And here the tam'd Euphrates humbly glides, And there the Rhine submits her swelling tides. And proud Araxes, whom no bridge could bind, The Danes' unconquer'd offspring march behind. and Morini the last of humankind. These figures on the shield divinely wrought, by Vulcan labour'd and by Venus brought, with joy and wonder fill the hero's thought. Unknown the names, he yet admires the grace, and bears aloft the fame and fortune of his race. End of Book 8. Book 9, Part 1. While these affairs in distant places passed, the various Irs Juno sends with haste, to find bold Turnus, who with anxious thought the secret shade of his great grandsire sought. Retir'd alone, she found the daring man, and op'd her rosy lips, and thus began: "What none of all the gods could grant thy vows, that Turnus this auspicious day bestows. Aeneas, gone to seek th' Arcadian prince, has left the Trojan camp without defence, and, short of succours there, employs his pains in parts remote to raise the Tuscan swains. Now snatch an hour that favours thy designs, unite thy forces, and attack their lines." This said, on equal wings she pois'd her weight, and form'd a radiant rainbow in her flight. The Daunian hero lifts his hands, eyes, and thus invokes the goddess as she flies: "Iris, the grace of heav'n, what pow'r divine Has sent thee down thro' dusky clouds to shine? See, they divide; immortal day appears, And glitt'ring planets dancing in their spheres. With joy these happy omens I obey, And follow to the war the god that leads the way." Thus having said, as by the brook he stood, He scoop'd the water from the crystal flood. Then with his hands the drops to heav'n he throws, And loads the pow'rs above with offer'd vows. Now march the bold confederates thro' the plain, Well horsed, well clad, a rich and shining train. Messapus leads the van, and in the rear The sons of Tyrrheus in bright arms appear. In the main battle, with his flaming crest, The mighty Turnus tow'rs above the rest. Silent they move, majestically slow, Like ebbing Nile, or Ganges in his flow. The Trojans view the dusty cloud from far, And the dark menace of the distant war. Caicus from the rampire saw it rise, Black'ning the fields, and thick'ning thro' the skies. Then to his fellows thus aloud he calls: "What rolling clouds, my friends, approach the walls? Arm, arm, and man the works; prepare your spears, And pointed darts; the Latian host appears." Thus warn'd, they shut their gates, with shouts ascend The bulwarks, and secure their foes attend. For their wise general, with foreseeing care, Had charged them not to tempt the doubtful war, Nor, tho' provoked, in open fields advance, But close within their lines attend their chance. Unwilling, yet they keep the strict command, And sorely await in arms the hostile band. The fiery Turnus flew before the rest; A piebald steed of Thracian strain he press'd. His helm of massy gold, and crimson was his crest, With 20 horse to second his designs. An unexpected foe, he fac'd the lines. "Is there," he said, "in arms, who bravely dare His leader honour, and his danger share?" Then spurring on, his brandish'd dart he threw, In sign of war. Applauding shouts ensue. Amaz'd to find a dastard race that run Behind the rampires, and the battle shun, He rides around the camp with rolling eyes, And stops at ev'ry post, and ev'ry passage tries. So roams the nightly wolf about the fold, Wet with descending show'rs, and stiff with cold. He howls for hunger, and he grins for pain; His gnashing teeth are exercis'd in vain, And impotent of anger finds no way. in his distended paws to grasp the prey. The mothers listen, but the bleating lambs securely swig the dug beneath the dams. Thus rangers eager turn us o'er the plain, sharp with desire, and furious with disdain. So weighs each passage with a piercing sight, to force his foes in equal field to fight. Thus, while he gazes round, at length he spies where fenc'd with strong redoubts their navy lies. Close underneath the walls the washing tide secures from all approach this weaker side. He takes the wish'd occasion, fills his hand with ready fires, and shakes a flaming brand. Urg'd by his presence, every soul is warm'd, and every hand with kindled fires is arm'd. From the fir'd pines the scattering sparkles fly; fat vapours mix'd with flames involve the sky. What pow'r, O Muses, could avert the flame which threaten'd in the fleet the Trojan name? Tell, for the fact, thro' length of time obscure, is hard to faith, yet shall the fame endure. 'Tis said that when the chief prepar'd his flight, and fell'd his timber from Mount Ida's height, the grandam goddess then approach'd her son, and with a mother's majesty begun. "Grant me," she said, "the sole request I bring, Since conquer'd heav'n has own'd you for its king. On Ida's brows for ages past there stood, With firs and maples fill'd, a shady wood; And on the summit rose a sacred grove, Where I was worshipp'd with religious love. Those woods, that holy grove, my long delight, I gave the Trojan prince to speed his flight. Now, fill'd with fear, on their behalf I come. Let neither winds o'erset nor waves entomb The floating forests of the sacred pine, But let it be their safety to be mine." Then thus replied her awful son, who rolls The radiant stars, and heav'n and earth controls: "How dare you, mother, endless date demand For vessels moulded by a mortal hand? What then is fate? Shall bold Aeneas ride, Of safety certain, on th' uncertain tide? Yet what I can, I grant. When wafted o'er, the chief is landed on the Latian shore. Whatever ships escape the raging storms, At my command shall change their fading forms To nymphs divine, and plow the wat'ry way, Like Dotis and the daughters of the sea. To seal this sacred vow, by Styx he swore The lake of liquid pitch, the dreary shore, And Phlegethon's innavigable flood, And the black regions of his brother god. He said, and shook the skies with his imperial nod. And now at length the number'd hours were come, Prefix'd by fate's irrevocable doom, When the great mother of the gods was free To save her ships, and finish Jove's decree. First, from the quarter of the morn there sprung A light that sign'd the heavens, and shots along. Then from a cloud, fring'd round with golden fires, Were timbrels heard, and very Cynthian choirs. And last, a voice with more than mortal sounds Both hosts in arm oppos'd, with equal horror wounds. "O Trojan race, your needless aid forbear, And know my ships are my peculiar care. With greater ease the bold Rutulian may With hissing brands attempt to burn the sea. Then singe my sacred pines; but you may charge, Loos'd from your crooked anchors launch'd at large. Exalted each a nymph, forsake the sand, And swim the seas at Cybele's command." No sooner had the goddess ceas'd to speak, When lo! th' obedient ships their hawsers break; And, strange to tell, like dolphins in the main, They plunge their prows, and dive and spring again. As many beauteous maids the billows sweep, As rode before tall vessels on the deep. The foes, surpris'd, with wonder stood aghast. Messapus curb'd his fiery coursers' haste. Old Tiber roar'd, and, raising up his head, Call'd back his waters to their oozy bed. Turnus alone, undaunted, bore the shock, And with these words his trembling troops bespoke: These monsters for the Trojans' fate are meant, And are, by Jove, for black presages sent. He takes the cowards' last relief away, For fly they cannot, and, constrain'd to stay, Must yield unfought a base inglorious prey. The liquid half of all the globe is lost; Heav'n shuts the seas, and we secure the coast. Theirs is no more than that small spot of ground Which myriads of our martial men surround. Their fates I fear not, or vain oracles. 'Twas given to Venus they should cross the seas, And land secure upon the Latian plains. Their promis'd hour is past, and mine remains. 'Tis in the fate of Turnus to destroy, With sword and fire, the faithless race of Troy. Shall such affronts as these alone inflame The Grecian brothers, and the Grecian name? My cause and theirs is one, a fatal strife, And final ruin for a ravish'd wife. Was't not enough that, punish'd for the crime, They fell, but will they fall a second time? One would have thought they paid enough before, To curse the costly sex, and durst offend no more. Can they securely trust their feeble wall? A slight partition, a thin interval, Betwixt their fate and them, when Troy, tho' built By hands divine, yet perish'd by their guilt. Lend me, for once, my friends, your valiant hands, To force from out their lines these dastard bands. Less than 1,000 ships will end this war, Nor Vulcan needs his fated arms prepare. Let all the Tuscans, all th' Arcadians join, Nor these nor those shall frustrate my design. Let them not fear the treasons of the night, The robb'd Palladium, the pretended flight. Our onset shall be made in open light; No wooden engine shall their town betray. Fires they shall have around, but fires by day. No Grecian babes before their camp appear, Whom Hector's arms detain'd to the 10th tardy year. Now, since the sun is rolling to the west, Give we the silent night to needful rest. Refresh your bodies, and your arms prepare; The morn shall end the small remains of war. The post of honour to Messapus falls, To keep the nightly guard, to watch the walls, To pitch the fires at distances around, And close the Trojans in their scanty ground. Twice 7 Rutulian captains ready stand, And twice 700 horse these chiefs command. All clad in shining arms the works invest, Each with a radiant helm and waving crest. Stretch'd at their length, they press the grassy ground; They laugh, they sing, the jolly bowls go round. With lights and cheerful fires renew the day, And pass the wakeful night in feasts and play. The Trojans from above their foes beheld, And with arm'd legions all the rampires fill'd. Seiz'd with affright, their gates they first explore, Join works to works, with bridges tow'r to tow'r. Thus all things needful for defence abound. Mnestus and brave Serestus walk the round, Commission'd by their absent prince to share The common danger, and divide the care. The soldiers draw their lots, and, as they fall, By turns relieve each other on the wall. Nigh where the foes their utmost guards advance, To watch the gate was warlike Nisus' chance. His father Hyrtacus of noble blood, His mother was a huntress on the wood, And sent him to the wars. Well could he bear His lance in fight, and dart the flying spear, But better skill'd unerring shafts to send. Beside him stood Euryalus his friend. Euryalus, then, whom the Trojan host No fairer face or sweeter air could boast. Scarce had the down to shade his cheeks begun; One was their care, and their delight was one. One common hazard in the war they shar'd, And now were both by choice upon the guard. Then Nisus thus: "Or do the gods inspire This warmth, or make we gods of our desire? A gen'rous ardour boils within my breast, Eager of action, enemy to rest. This urges me to fight, and fires my mind To leave a memorable name behind. Thou seest the foe secure, how faintly shine their scatter'd fires; the most in sleep supine. Along the ground an easy conquest lie; the wakeful few a fuming flagon ply. All hush'd around, now hear what I revolve, a thought unripe, and scarcely yet resolv'd. Our absent prince both camp and council mourn; by message both would hasten his return. If they confer what I demand on thee, for fame is recompense enough for me. Methinks beneath yon hill I have espied a way that safely will my passage guide." Euryalus stood listening while he spoke, with love of praise and noble envy struck; then to his ardent friend expos'd his mind: "All this alone, and leaving me behind! Am I unworthy, Nisus, to be join'd? Thinkest thou I can share of glory yield, Or send thee unassisted to the field? Not so: my father taught my childhood arms, Born in a siege, and bred among alarms. Nor is my youth unworthy of my friend, Nor of the heav'n born hero I attend. The thing call'd life with ease I can disclaim, And think it oversold to purchase fame." Then Nisus thus: "Alas! thy tender years Would minister new matter to my fears. So may the gods, who view this friendly strife, Restore me to thy lov'd embrace with life. Condemn'd to pay my vows, as sure I trust, This thy request is cruel and unjust. But if some chance, as many chances are, And doubtful hazards in the deeds of war, If one should reach my head, there let it fall, And spare thy life, I would not perish all. Thy bloomy youth deserves a longer date; Live thou to mourn thy love's unhappy fate, To bear my mangled body from the foe, Or buy it back, and funeral rites bestow. Or, if hard fortune shall those dues deny, Thou canst at least an empty tomb supply. O let not me the widow's tears renew, Nor let a mother's curse my name pursue. Thy pious parents, who, for love of thee, Forsook the coast of friendly Sicily, Her age committing to the seas and wind, When ev'ry weary matron stay'd behind. To this Euryalus: "You plead in vain, And but protract the cause you cannot gain. No more delays, but haste." With that he wakes The nodding watch; each to his office takes. The guard reliev'd, the gen'rous couple went To find the consul at the royal tent. All creatures else forgot their daily care, And sleep, the common gift of nature, share; Except the Trojan peers, who wakeful sate In nightly council for th' endanger'd state. They vote a message to their absent chief, Shew their distress, and beg a swift relief. Amid the camp a silent seat they chose, Remote from clamour, and secure from foes. On their left arms their ample shields they bear, The right reclin'd upon the bending spear. Now Nisus and his friend approach the guard, And beg admission, eager to be heard. Th' affair important, not to be deferr'd, Ascanius bids 'em be conducted in, Ordering the more experienced to begin. Then Nisus thus: "Ye fathers, lend your ears, Nor judge our bold attempt beyond our years. The foe, securely drench'd in sleep and wine, Neglect their watch; the fires but thinly shine; And where the smoke in cloudy vapours flies, Cov'ring the plain, and curling to the skies, Betwixt two paths, which at the gate divide, Close by the sea, a passage we have spied, Which will our way to great Aeneas guide. Expect each hour to see him safe again, Loaded with spoils of foes in battle slain. Snatch we the lucky minute while we may, Nor can we be mistaken in the way. For, hunting in the vale, we both have seen The rising turrets, and the stream between, And know the winding course with ev'ry ford." He ceas'd, and old Alethes took the word: "Our country gods, in whom our trust we place, Will yet from ruin save the Trojan race, While we behold such dauntless worth appear In dawning youth, and souls so void of fear. Then into tears of joy the father broke, each in his longing arms by turns he took, panted, and paused, and thus again he spoke: "Ye brave young men, what equal gifts can we In recompense of such desert decree? The greatest, sure, and best you can receive, The gods and your own conscious worth will give; The rest our grateful general will bestow, And young Ascanius till his manhood owe. And I, whose welfare in my father lies," Ascanius adds, "by the great deities, by my dear country, by my household gods, by hoary Vesta's rites and dark abodes, adjure you both, on you my fortune stands, that and my faith I plight into your hands. Make me but happy in his safe return, whose wonted presence I can only mourn. Your common gift shall 2 large goblets be, of silver, wrought with curious imagery, and high embossed, which, when old Priam reign'd, my conqu'ring sire at sack'd Areceba gain'd. And more, 2 tripods cast in antique mould, with 2 great talents of the finest gold; beside a costly bowl engrav'd with art, which Dido gave, when first she gave her heart. But if in conquer'd Italy we reign, when spoils by lot the victor shall obtain, thou saw'st the courser by proud Turnus press'd, that Nisus and his arms and nodding crest, And shield from chance exempt, shall be thy share: 12 lab'ring slaves, 12 handmaids young and fair, All clad in rich attire, and train'd with care. And last, a Latian field with fruitful plains, And a large portion of the king's domains. But thou, whose years are more to mine allied, No fate my vow'd affection shall divide. From thee, heroic youth, be fully mine; Take full possession; all my soul is thine. One faith, one fame, one fate shall both attend, My life's companion, and my bosom friend. My peace shall be committed to thy care, And to thy conduct my concerns inware." Then thus the young Euryalus replied: "Whatever fortune, good or bad, betide, The same shall be my age as now my youth; No time shall find me wanting to my truth. This only from your goodness let me gain, And, this ungranted, all rewards are vain. Of Priam's royal race my mother came, And sure the best that ever bore the name; Whom neither Troy nor Sicily could hold From me departing, but o'erspent and old. My fate she follow'd, ignorant of this; Whatever danger, neither parting kiss, Nor pious blessing taken, her I leave, And in this only act of all my life deceive. By this right hand and conscious night I swear, My soul so sad a farewell could not bear. Be you her comfort, fill my vacant place, Permit me to presume so great a grace, Support her age, forsaken and distress'd, That hope alone will fortify my breast." Against the worst of fortunes and of fears, He said, the mov'd assistants melt in tears. Then thus Ascanius, wonderstruck to see That image of his filial piety: "So great beginnings, in so green an age, Exact the faith which I again engage. Thy mother all the dues shall justly claim Creusa had, and only want the name. Whatever event thy bold attempt shall have, 'Tis merit to have borne a son so brave. Now by my head a sacred oath I swear, My father us'd it, what returning here, Crown'd with success, I for thyself prepare, That, if thou fail, shall thy lov'd mother share." He said, and weeping while he spoke the word, From his broad belt he drew a shining sword, Magnificent with gold, Lycaon made, And in an ivory scabbard sheath'd the blade. This was his gift: great Mnestheus gave his friend A lion's hide, his body to defend; And good Alethes furnish'd him beside With his own trusty helm, of temper tried. Thus arm'd they went. The noble Trojans wait Their issuing forth, and follow to the gate. With pray'rs and vows, above the rest appears Ascanius, manly far beyond his years, And messages committed to their care, Which all in winds were lost, and flitting air. The trenches first they pass'd, then took their way where their proud foes in pitch'd pavilions lay. To many fatal, ere themselves were slain, they found the careless host dispers'd upon the plain, who, gorg'd and drunk with wine, supinely snore. Unharness'd chariots stand along the shore. Amidst the wheels and reins, the goblets by, a medley of debauch and war they lie. Observing Nisus, shrewd his friend the sight. Behold a conquest gain'd without a fight! Occasion offers, and I stand prepar'd. There lies our way; be thou upon the guard, and look around, while I securely go, and you a passage thro' the sleeping foe." Softly he spoke, then striding took his way, with his drawn sword, where haughty Rhamnes lay, his head rais'd high on tapestry beneath, and heaving from his breast he drew his breath. A king and prophet by King Turnus lov'd, but fate by prescience cannot be remov'd. Him and his sleeping slaves he slew, then spies where Remus with his rich retinue lies. His armour-bearer first, and next he kills his charioteer, intrench'd betwixt the wheels, and his lov'd horses last invades their lord. Full on his neck he drives the fatal sword. The gasping head flies off; a purple flood flows from the trunk, that welters in the blood, which, by the spurning heels dispers'd around, the bed besprinkles, and bedews the ground. Lamus the bold, and Lamyrus the strong, he slew, and then Serranus fair and young. From dice and wine the youth retir'd to rest, and puff'd the fumy god from out his breast. Even then he dreamt of drink and lucky play, more lucky, had it lasted till the day. The famish'd lion thus, with hunger bold, o'erleaps the fences of the nightly fold, and tears the peaceful flocks with silent awe. Trembling they lie, and pant beneath his paw. Nor with less rage Euryalus employs the wrathful sword, or fewer foes destroys. But on th' ignoble crowd his fury flew; He Fadus, Hebesus, and Rhoetus slew. Oppress'd with heavy sleep the former fell, but Rhoetus wakeful, and observing all. Behind a spacious jar he slink'd for fear; The fatal iron found, and reach'd him there. For, as he rose, it pierc'd his naked side, And reeking thence return'd in crimson dyed. The wound pours out a stream of wine and blood; The purple soul comes floating in the flood. Now, where Messapus quarter'd they arrive. The fires were fainting there, and just alive. The warrior horses, tied in order, fed. Nisus observ'd the discipline, and said: "Our eager thirst of blood may both betray, And see the scatter'd streaks of dawning day. Foe to nocturnal thefts, no more, my friend! Here let our glutted execution end. A lane thro' slaughter'd bodies we have made." The bold Euryalus, tho' loth, obey'd. Of arms and arras, and of plate, they find A precious load; but these they leave behind. Yet, fond of gaudy spoils, the boy would stay To make the rich caparison his prey, Which on the steed of conquer'd Rhamnes lay. Nor did his eyes less longingly behold The girdle belt, with nails of burnish'd gold. This present Caedicus the rich bestow'd On Remulus, when friendship first they vow'd; And, absent, join'd in hospitable ties, He, dying, to his heir bequeath'd the prize. Till, by the conqu'ring Ardean troops oppress'd, He fell, and they the glorious gift possess'd. These glitt'ring spoils now may the victors gain, He to his body suits, but suits in vain. Messapus' helm he finds among the rest, And laces on, and wears the waving crest. Proud of their conquest, prouder of their prey, They leave the camp, and take the ready way. Book 9 Book 9a Night Sortie, a Day Assault, Part 2. But far they had not pass'd, before they spied 300 horse, with Volscens for their guide. The queen a legion to King Turnus sent. but the swift horse the slower foot prevent. And now advancing sought the leader's tent. They saw the pair, for thro' the doubtful shade his shining helm Euryalus betray'd, on which the moon with full reflection play'd. "'Tis not for naught," cried Volscens from the crowd, "these men go there." Then rais'd his voice aloud: "Stand, stand! Why thus in arms, and whither bent? From whence, to whom, and on what errand sent?" Silent they scud away, and haste their flight To neighb'ring woods, and trust themselves to night. The speedy horse all passages belay, And spur their smoking steeds to cross their way, And watch each entrance of the winding wood. Black was the forest, thick with beech it stood, Horrid with fern, and intricate with thorn. Few paths of human feet, or tracks of beasts, were worn. The darkness of the shades his heavy prey, And fear misled the younger from his way. But Nisus hit the turns with happier haste, And, thoughtless of his friend, the forest pass'd, And Alban plains, from Alba's name so call'd, Where King Latinus then his oxen stall'd. Till turning at the length he stood his ground, And miss'd his friend, and cast his eyes around. "Ah wretch!" he cried, "where have I left behind The unhappy youth? Where shall I hope to find? Or what way take?" Again he ventures back, And treads the mazes of his former track. He winds the wood, and list'ning hears the noise Of tramping coursers, and the rider's voice. The sound approach'd, and suddenly he view'd The foes inclosing, and his friend pursued, Forelaid and taken, while he strove in vain The shelter of the friendly shades to gain. What should he next attempt? What arms employ? What fruitless force to free the captive boy? Or desperate should he rush and lose his life, With odds oppress'd in such unequal strife? Resolv'd at length, his pointed spear he shook, And casting on the moon a mournful look: "Guardian of groves, and goddess of the night, Fair queen," he said, "direct my dart aright. If e'er my pious father, for my sake, Did grateful off'rings on thy altars make, Or I increas'd them with my sylvan toils, And hung thy holy roofs with savage spoils, Give me to scatter these." Then from his ear He pois'd, and aim'd, and launch'd the trembling spear. The deadly weapon, hissing from the grove, Impetuous on the back of Sulmo drove, Pierc'd his thin armour, drank his vital blood, And in his body left the broken. He staggers round, his eyeballs roll in death, And with short sobs he gasps away his breath. All stand amaz'd. A second jav'lin flies With equal strength, and quivers thro' the skies. This thro' thy temples Tagus forc'd the way, And in the brainpan warmly buried lay. Fierce Volscens foams with rage, and, gazing round, Descried not him who gave the fatal wound, Nor knew to fix revenge. "But thou," he cries, "shalt pay for both," and at the pris'ner flies With his drawn sword. Then, struck with deep despair, That cruel sight the lover could not bear, But from his covert rush'd in open view, And sent his voice before him as he flew. "Me, me!" he cried, "turn all your swords alone! On me the fact confess'd, the fault my own!" He neither could nor durst. The guiltless youth: "Ye moon and stars, bear witness to the truth! His only crime, if friendship can offend, Is too much love to this unhappy friend." Too late he speaks. The sword, which fury guides, Driv'n with full force, had pierc'd his tender sides. Down fell the beauteous youth; the yawning wound Gush'd out a purple stream, and stain'd the ground. His snowy neck reclines upon his breast, Like a fair flow'r by the keen share oppress'd, Like a white poppy sinking on the plain, whose heavy head is overcharged with rain. Despair, and rage, and vengeance justly vow'd, drove Nisus headlong on the hostile crowd. Volscens he seeks, on him alone he bends, borne back and bor'd by his surrounding friends. Onward he press'd, and kept him still in sight, then whirl'd aloft his sword with all his might. Th' unerring steel descended while he spoke, pierc'd his wide mouth, and thro' his weapon broke. Dying he slew, and stagg'ring on the plain, with swimming eyes he sought his lover slain. Then quiet on his bleeding bosom fell, content in death to be reveng'd so well. O happy friends! for if my verse can give immortal life, your fame shall ever live, fix'd as the Capitol's foundation lies, and spread where'er the Roman eagle flies. The conqu'ring party first divide the prey, then their slain leader to the camp convey. With wonder, as they went, the troops were fill'd, to see such numbers whom so few had kill'd. Serranus, Rhamnus, and the rest they found; vast crowds the dying and the dead surround, and the yet reeking blood o'erflows the ground. All knew the helmet which Messapus lost, but mourn'd a purchase that so dear had cost. Now rose the ruddy morn from Teton's bed, and with the dawn of day the skies o'erspread. Nor long the sun his daily course withheld, but added colours to the world reveal'd. When earthly Turnus, wak'ning with the light, all clad in armour, calls his troops to fight. His martial men with fierce harangue he fir'd, and his own ardour in their souls inspir'd. This done, to give new terrors to his foes, the heads of Nisus and his friends he shows, rais'd high on pointed spears, a ghastly sight. Loud peals of shouts ensue, and barbarous delight. Meantime the Trojans run where danger calls. They line their trenches, and they man their walls. In front extended, to the left they stood. Safe was the right, surrounded by the flood. But casting from their tow'rs a frightful view, they saw the faces, which too well they knew. Tho' then disguis'd in death, and smear'd all o'er with filth obscene, and dropping putrid gore, soon hasty Fame thro' the sad city bears the mournful messages to the mother's ears. An icy cold benumbs her limbs; she shakes her cheeks, the blood, her hand the web forsakes. She runs the rampires round amidst the war, nor fears the flying darts; she rends her hair, and fills with loud laments the liquid air. Thus then my lov'd Euryalus appears; thus looks the prop my declining years. Was't on this face my famish'd eyes I fed? O how unlike the living is the dead! And couldst thou leave me, cruel, thus alone? Not one kind kiss from a departing son? No look, no last adieu before he went? An ill-boding hour to slaughter sent? Cold on the ground, and pressing foreign clay, to Latian dogs and fowls he lies a prey. Nor was I near to close his dying eyes, to wash his wounds, to weep his obsequies, to call about his corpse his crying friends, or spread the mantle, made for other ends, on his dear body, which I wove with care, nor did my daily pains or nightly labour spare. Where shall I find his corpse? What earth sustains his trunk dismember'd, and his cold remains? For this, alas, I left my needful ease, expos'd my life to winds and winter seas. If any pity touch Rutulian hearts, here empty all your quivers, all your darts. Or if they fail, thou, Jove, conclude my woe, and send me thunderstruck to shades below. Her shrieks and clamours pierce the Trojans' ears, unman their courage, and augment their fears. Nor young Ascanius could the sight sustain. Nor old Ilioneus his tears restrain, But actor Aeneas jointly sent, To bear the madding mother to her tent. And now the trumpets terribly from far, With rattling clangour, rouse the sleepy war. The soldiers' shouts succeed the brazen sounds, And heav'n from pole to pole the noise rebounds. The Volscians bear their shields upon their head, And, rushing forward, form a moving shed. These fill the ditch, those pull the bulwarks down; Some raise the ladders, others scale the town. But where void spaces on the walls appear, Or thin defence, they pour their forces there. With poles and missive weapons from afar, The Trojans keep aloof the rising war. Taught by their 10 years' siege defensive fight, They roll down ribs of rocks, and unresisted white. To break the penthouse with a pond'rous blow Would yet the patient Volscians undergo, But could not bear th' unequal combat long. For where the Trojans find the thickest throng, The ruin falls, their shatter'd shields give way, And their crush'd heads become an easy prey. They shrink for fear, abated of their rage, Nor longer dare in a blind fight engage; Contented now to gall them from below, With darts and slings, and with the distant bow. Elsewhere Mezentius, terrible to view, A blazing pine within the trenches threw. But brave Messapus, Neptune's warlike son, Broke down the palisades, the trenches won, And loud for ladders calls, to scale the town. Calliope, begin, ye sacred nine! Inspire your poet in his high design, To sing what slaughter manly Turnus made, What souls he sent below the Stygian shade, What fame the soldiers with their captain share, And the vast circuit of the fatal war. For you in singing martial facts excel; You best remember, and alone can tell. There stood a tow'r, amazing to the sight, Built up of beams, and of stupendous height. Art and the nature of the place conspir'd To furnish all the strength that war requir'd. To level this, the bold Italians join; The wary Trojans obviate their design. With weighty stones overwhelm their troops below, Shoot thro' the loopholes, and sharp jav'lins throw. Turnus, the chief, toss'd from his thund'ring hand Against the wooden walls a flaming brand. It stuck, the fiery plague; the winds were high, The planks were season'd, and the timber dry. Contagion caught the posts; it spread along, Scorch'd, and to distance drove the scatter'd throng. The Trojans fled; the fire pursued amain, Still gath'ring fast upon the trembling train, Till, crowding to the corners of the wall, Down the defence and the defenders fall. The mighty flaw makes heav'n itself resound; The dead and dying Trojans strew the ground. The tow'r that follow'd on the fallen crew Whelm'd o'er their heads, and buried whom it slew. Some stuck upon the darts themselves had sent; All the same equal ruin underwent. Young Lycus and Helenor only 'scape, Sav'd, how they know not, from the steepy leap. Helenor, elder of the two by birth, On one side royal, one a son of earth, Whom to the Lydian king Licymnia bare, And sent her boasted bastard to the war; A privilege which none but freemen share. Slight were his arms, a sword and silver shield; No marks of honour charg'd its empty field. Light as he fell, so light the youth arose, And rising found himself amidst his foes. Nor flight was left, nor hopes to force his way; Embolden'd by despair, he stood at bay. And, like a stag whom all the troop surrounds, O eager huntsman, and invading hounds! Resolv'd on death, he dissipates his fears, And bounds aloft against the pointed spears. So dares the youth, secure of death, and throws his dying body on his thickest foes. But Lycus, swifter on his feet by far, runs, doubles, winds, and turns amidst the war, springs to the walls, and leaves his foes behind, and snatches at the beam he first can find, looks up, and leaps aloft at all the stretch, in hopes the helping hand of some kind friend to reach. But Turnus followed hard his hunted prey; his spear had almost reach'd him in the way, short of his reins, and scarce a span behind. "Fool," said the chief, "thou fleeter than the wind, couldst thou presume to 'scape when I pursue?" He said, and downward by the feet he drew the trembling dastard. At the tug he falls; vast ruins come along, rent from the smoking walls. Thus on some silver swan, or tim'rous hare, Jove's bird comes sousing down from upper air. Her crooked talons truss the fearful prey, then out of sight she soars, and wings her way. So seizes the grim wolf the tender lamb, in vain lamented by the bleating dam. Then rushing onward with a barbarous cry, the troops of Turnus to the combat fly. The ditch with fagots fill'd, the daring foe toss'd firebrands to the steepy turrets throw. Ilioneus, as bold as Lucetius, came to force the gate, and feed the kindling flame, roll'd down the fragment of a rock so right, it crush'd him double underneath his weight. Two more young Liger and Asylas slew; to bend the bow young Liger better knew. Asylas best the pointed jav'lin threw; brave Caeneus laid Ortygius on the plain. The victor Caeneus was by Turnus slain. By the same hand Clonius and Itys fall, Sagar and Ida standing on the wall. From Capys' arms his fate Privernus found, hurt by Themilla first, but slight the wound. His shield thrown by, to mitigate the smart, he clapp'd his hand upon the wounded part. The second shaft came swift and unespied, and pierc'd his hand, and nail'd it to his side, transfix'd his breathing lungs and beating heart. The soul came issuing out, and hiss'd against the dart. The son of Aeacus shone amid the rest, in glitt'ring armour and a purple vest. Fair was his face, his eyes inspiring love, bred by his father in the Marsian grove, where the fat altars of Palicus flame, and send in arms to purchase early fame. Him, when he spied from far the Tuscan king, laid by the lance, and took him to the sling. Thrice whirl'd the throng around his head, and threw the heated lead half melted as it flew. It pierc'd his hollow temples and his brain. The youth came tumbling down, and spurn'd the plain. Then young Ascanius, who before this day was wont in woods to shoot the savage prey, first bent in martial strife the twanging bow, and exercis'd against a human foe. With this bereft Numanus of his life, who Turnus' younger sister took to wife. Proud of his realm, and of his royal bride, vaunting before his troops, and lengthen'd with a stride, in these insulting terms the Trojans he defied: "Twice conquer'd cowards, now your shame is shown, Coop'd up a second time within your town, Who dare not issue forth in open field, But hold your walls before you for a shield. Thus threat you war, thus our alliance force. What gods, what madness, hither steer'd your course? You shall not find the sons of Atreus here, Nor need the frauds of sly Ulysses fear. Strong from the cradle of a sturdy brood, We bear our new born infants to the flood. There bath'd amid the stream our boys we hold, With winter harden'd, and inur'd to cold. They wake before the day, to range the wood, Kill ere they eat, nor taste unconquer'd food. No sports but what belong to war they know, To break the stubborn colt, to bend the bow. Our youth, of labour patient, earn their bread; Hardly they work, with frugal diet fed. From plows and harrows sent to seek renown, they fight in fields, and storm the shaken town. No part of life from toils of war is free, No change in age, or difference in degree. We plow, and till in arms our oxen feel, Instead of goads, the spur and pointed steel. Th' inverted lance makes furrows in the plain. Even time, that changes all, yet changes us in vain. The body, not the mind, nor can control Th' immortal vigour, or abate the soul. Our helms defend the young, disguise the gray. We live by plunder, and delight in prey. Your vests, embroider'd with rich purple, shine. In sloth you glory, and in dances join. Your vests have sweeping sleeves, with female pride. Your turbans underneath your chins are tied. Go, Phrygians, to your Dindymus again. Go, less than women in the shape of men. Go, mix'd with eunuchs in the mother's rites, Where with unequal sound the flute invites. Sing, dance, and howl, by turns in Ida's shade. Resign the war to men who know the martial trade. This foul reproach Ascanius could not hear With patience, or a vow'd revenge forbear. At the full stretch of both his hands he drew, And almost join'd the horns of the tough yew. But first before the throne of Jove he stood, And thus with lifted hands invoked the god: "My first attempt, great Jupiter, succeed! An annual off'ring in thy grove shall bleed, A snow white steer, before thy altar led, Who, like his mother, bears aloft his head, Buts with his threat'ning brows, and bellowing stands, And dares the fight, and spurns the yellow sands." Jove bow'd the heavens, and lent a gracious ear, And thunder'd on the left amidst the clear. Sounded at once the bow, and swiftly flies The feather'd death, and hisses thro' the skies. The steel thro' both his temples forc'd the way. Extended on the ground Numanus lay. Go now, vain boaster, and true valour scorn. The Phrygians twice subdued, yet make this third return. Ascanius said no more. The Trojans shake The heavens with shouting, and new vigour take. Apollo then bestrode a golden cloud, To view the feats of arms and fighting crowd. And thus the beardless victor he bespoke aloud: "Advance, illustrious youth, increase in fame, And wide from east to west extend thy name. Offspring of gods thyself, and Rome shall owe To thee a race of demigods below. This is the way to heav'n: the pow'rs divine From this beginning date the Julian line. To thee, to them, and their victorious heirs, The conquer'd war is due, and the vast world is theirs. Troy is too narrow for thy name," he said, And plunging downward shot his radiant head. Dispell'd the breathing air that broke his flight, Shorn of his beams, a man to mortal sight. Old Butes' form he took, Anchises' squire, Now left to rule Ascanius by his sire. His wrinkled visage and his hoary hairs, His mien, his habit, and his arms he wears, And thus salutes the boy, too forward for his years: "Suffice it thee, thy father's worthy son, The warlike prize thou hast already won. The god of archers gives thy youth a part Of his own praise, nor envies equal art. Now tempt the war no more," he said, and flew, Obscure in air, and vanish'd from their view. The Trojans by his arms their patron know, And hear the twanging of his heav'nly bow. Then duteous force they use, and Phoebus name, To keep from fight the youth too fond of fame. Undaunted, they themselves no danger shun; From wall to wall the shouts and clamours run. They bend their bows, they whirl their slings around; Heaps of spent arrows fall, and strew the ground, And helms and shields and rattling arms resound. The combat thickens, like the storm that flies From westward, when the show'ry kids arise, or patt'ring hail comes pouring on the main, when Jupiter descends in harden'd rain, or bellowing clouds burst with a stormy sound, and with an arm'd winters thro' the ground. Pandarus and Bitias, thunderbolts of war, whom Hiera to bold Alcanor bare, on Ida's top to youths of height and size, like firs that on their mother mountain rise, presuming on their force the gates unbar, and of their own accord invite the war. With fates averse, against the king's command, arm'd on the right and on the left they stand, and flank the passage. Shining steel they wear, and waving crests above their heads appear. Thus two tall oaks, that Padus' banks adorn, lift up to heav'n their leafy heads unshorn, and, overpress'd with nature's heavy load, dance to the whistling winds, and at each other nod. In flows a tide of Latians, when they see the gate set open, and the passage free. Bold Quercens, with rash Tmarus rushing on, Equicolus, that in bright armour shone, and Haemon first; but soon repuls'd they fly, or in the well-defended pass they die. These with success are fir'd, and those with rage, and each on equal terms at length engage. Drawn from their lines, and issuing on the plain, the Trojans hand to hand the fight maintain. Fierce Turnus in another quarter fought, when suddenly th' unhop'd for news was brought. The foes had left the fastness of their place, prevail'd in fight, and had his men in chase. He quits th' attack, and, to prevent their fate, runs where the giant brothers guard the gate. The first he met, Antipater the brave, but base begotten on a Theban slave. Sarpedon's son he slew; the deadly dart found passage thro' his breast, and pierc'd his heart. Fix'd in the wound th' Italian cornel stood, warm'd in his lungs, and in his vital blood. Aphidnus next, and Erymanthus dies, and Meropes, and the gigantic size Of Bitias, threat'ning with his ardent eyes. Not by the feeble dart he fell oppress'd; a dart were lost within that roomy breast, but from a knotted lance, large, heavy, strong, which roar'd like thunder as it whirl'd along. Not two bull hides th' impetuous force withhold, nor coat of double mail, with scales of gold. Down sunk the monster bulk, and press'd the ground; His arms and clatt'ring shield on the vast body sound. Not with less ruin than the Baean mole, Rais'd on the seas, the surges to control, at once comes tumbling down the rocky wall. Prone to the deep, the stones disjointed fall. Of the vast pile the scatter'd ocean flies; Black sands, discolour'd froth, and mingled mud arise. The frighted billows roll, and seek the shores; Then trembles Prochyta, then Ischia roars. Typhoeus, thrown beneath by Jove's command, Astonish'd at the flaw that shakes the land, Soon shifts his weary side, and, scarce awake, With wonder feels the weight press lighter on his back. The warrior god the Latian troops inspir'd, New strung their sinews, and their courage fir'd, But chills the Trojan hearts with cold affright; Then black despair precipitates their flight. When Pandarus beheld his brother kill'd, The town with fear and wild confusion fill'd, He turns the hinges of the heavy gate With both his hands, and adds his shoulders to the weight. Some happier friends within the walls inclos'd, The rest shut out, to certain death expos'd. Fool as he was, and frantic in his care, T' admit young Turnus, and include the war, He thrust amid the crowd, securely bold, Like a fierce tiger pent amid the fold. Too late his blazing buckler they descry, And sparkling fires that shoot from either eye; His mighty members, and his ample breast, His rattling armour, and his crimson crest. Far from that hated face the Trojans flee, All but the fool who sought his destiny. Mad Pandarus steps forth, with vengeance vow'd, forbids just death, and threatens thus aloud: "These are not Ardea's walls, nor his the town Armata proffers with Lavinia's crown. 'Tis hostile earth you tread, of hope bereft; No means of safe return by flight are left. To whom, with countenance calm, and soul sedate, Thus Turnus: 'Then begin, and try thy fate. My message to the ghost of Priam bear; Tell him a new Achilles sent thee there.' A lance of tough ground ash the Trojan threw, Rough in the rind, and knotted as it grew. With his full force he whirl'd it first around, But the soft yielding air receiv'd the wound. Imperial Juno turn'd the course before, And fix'd the wand'ring weapon in the door. 'But hope not thou,' said Turnus, 'when I strike, To shun thy fate: our force is not alike, Nor thy steel temper'd by the Lemnian god.' Then rising, on his utmost stretch he stood, And aim'd from high: the full descending blow Cleaves the broad front and beardless cheeks in two. Down sinks the giant with a thund'ring sound; His pond'rous limbs oppress the trembling ground. Blood, brains, and foam gush from the gaping wound; Scalp, face, and shoulders the keen steel divides, And the charr'd visage hangs on equal sides. The Trojans fly from their approaching fate; And, had the victor then secur'd the gate, And to his troops without unclos'd the bars, One lucky day had ended all his wars. But boiling youth, and blind desire of blood, Push'd his fury to pursue the crowd. Hamstring'd behind, unhappy Gyges died; Then Phalaris is added to his side. The pointed jav'lins from the dead he drew, And their friends' arms against their fellows threw. Strong Halys stands in vain; weak Phlegus flies; Saturnia, still at hand, new force and fire supplies. Then Halius, Prytanis, Alcander fall, Engag'd against the foes who scal'd the wall. But whom they fear'd without they found within. At last, tho' late, by Lynceus he was seen. He calls new succours, and assaults the prince; But weak his force, and vain is their defence. Turn'd to the right, his sword the hero drew, And, at one blow, the bold aggressor slew. He joins the neck, and, with a stroke so strong, The helm flies off, and bears the head along. Next him the huntsman Amycus he kill'd, In darts envenom'd, and in poison skill'd. Then Clytius fell beneath his fatal spear, And Cretius, whom the Muses held so dear. He fought with courage, and he sung the fight; Arms were his business, verses his delight. The Trojan chiefs behold with rage and grief Their slaughter'd friends, and hasten their relief. Bold Mnestheus rallies first the broken train, Whom brave Seresthus and his troops sustain. To save the living, and revenge the dead, Against one warrior's arms all Troy they led. "O, void of sense and courage!" Mnestheus cried, "Where can you hope your coward heads to hide? Ah, where beyond these rampires can you run? One man, and in your camp inclos'd you shun. Shall then a single sword such slaughter boast, And pass unpunish'd from a num'rous host? Forsaking honour, and renouncing fame, Your gods, your country, and your king you shame." This just reproach their virtue does excite; They stand, they join, they thicken to the fight. Now Turnus doubts, and yet disdains to yield, But with slow paces measures back the field, And inches to the walls, where Tiber's tide, Washing the camp, defends the weaker side. The more he loses, they advance the more, And tread in ev'ry step he trod before. They shout, they bear him back; and, whom by might They cannot conquer, they oppress with weight. As compass'd with a wood of spears around, The lordly lion still maintains his ground. grins horrible, retires, and turns again, threats his distended paws, and shakes his mane. He loses while in vain he presses on, nor will his courage let him dare to run. So Turnus fares, and unresolv'd of flight, moves tardy back, and just recedes from fight. Yet twice in rage the combat he renews, twice breaks, and twice his broken foes pursues. But now they swarm, and with fresh troops supplied, come rolling on, and rush from every side. Nor Juno, who sustain'd his arms before, dares with new strength suffice th' exhausted store. For Jove, with sour commands, sent Iris down, to force th' invader from the frighted town. With labour spent, no longer can he wield the heavy falchion, or sustain the shield. O'erwhelm'd with darts, which from afar they fling, the weapons round his hollow temples ring. His golden helm gives way with stony blows, batter'd and flat, and beaten to his brows. His crest is rash'd away, his ample shield is falsified, and round with jav'lins fill'd. The foe now faint, the Trojans o'erwhelm, and Mnestheus lays hard load upon his helm. Sick sweat succeeds; he drops at every pore, with driving dust his cheeks are pasted o'er. Shorter and shorter ev'ry gasp he takes, and vain efforts and hurtless blows he makes. Plung'd in the flood, and made the waters fly, the yellow god the welcome burthen bore, and whipp'd the sweat, and wash'd away the gore. Then gently wafts him to the farther coast, and sends him safe to cheer his anxious host. End of Book 9.
Book 10. The Death of Princes. Part 1. The gates of heaven unfold. Jove summons all the gods to council in the common hall. Sublimely seated, he surveys from far the fields, the camp, the fortune of the war, and all the inferior world. From first to last the sovereign senate in degrees are placed. Then thus the almighty sire began: Ye gods, natives or denizens of blest abodes, from whence these murmurs and this change of mind, this backward fate from what was first design'd? Why this protracted war, when my commands pronounced a peace, and gave the Latian lands? What fear or hope on either part divides our heavens, and arms our powers on different sides? A lawful time of war at length will come, nor need your haste anticipate the doom, when Carthage shall contend the world with Rome, shall force the rigid rocks and Alpine chains, and like a flood come pouring on the plains. Then is your time for faction and debate, for partial favour and permitted hate. Let now your immature dissension cease. Sit quiet, and compose your souls to peace. Thus Jupiter in few unfolds the charge, but lovely Venus thus replies at large: O power immense, eternal energy, for to what else protection can we fly? Seest thou the proud Rutulians, how they dare, in fields, unpunish'd, and insult my care? How lofty Turnus vaunts amid his train, in shining arms, triumphant on the plain? Ev'n in their lines and trenches they contend, and scarce their walls the Trojan troops defend. The town is fill'd with slaughter, and o'erfloats with a red deluge their increasing moats. Aeneas, ignorant and far from thence, has left a camp exposed without defence. This endless outrage shall they still sustain? Shall Troy renew'd be forced and fired again? A second siege my banish'd issue fears, and a new Diomede in arms appears. One more audacious mortal will be found, and I, thy daughter, wait another wound. Yet if with fates averse, without thy leave, the Latian lands my progeny receive, bear they the pains of violated law, and thy protection from their aid withdraw. But if the gods their sure success foretell, if those of heaven consent with those of hell to promise Italy, who dare debate the power of Jove, or fix another fate? What should I tell of tempests on the main, of Aeolus usurping Neptune's reign, of Iris sent with Bacchanalian heat to inspire the matrons and destroy the fleet. Now Juno to the Stygian sky descends, solicits hell for aid, and arms the fiends. That new example wanted yet above, an act that well became the wife of Jove. Alecto, raised by her, with rage inflames the peaceful bosoms of the Latian dames. Imperial sway no more exalts my mind. Such hopes I had, indeed, while heaven was kind. Now let my happier foes possess my place, whom Jove prefers before the Trojan race, and conquer they whom you with conquest grace. Since you can spare from all your wide command no spot of earth, no hospitable land, which may my wandering fugitives receive, since haughty Juno will not give you leave. Then, father, if I still may use that name, by ruined Troy, yet smoking from the flame, I beg you, let Ascanius by my care be freed from danger and dismiss the war. Inglorious let him live, without a crown. The father may be cast on coasts unknown, struggling with fate, but let me save the son. Mine is Cythera, mine the Cyprian towers. In those recesses and those sacred bowers obscurely let him rest, his right resign to promised empire and his Julian line. Then Carthage may the Ausonian towns destroy, nor fear the race of a rejected boy. What profits it, my son, to scape the fire, arm'd with his gods and loaded with his sire, to pass the perils of the seas and wind, evade the Greeks and leave the war behind, to reach the Italian shores, if, after all, our second Pergamus is doom'd to fall? Much better had he curb'd his high desires, and hover'd o'er his ill-extinguish'd fires, to Simois' banks the fugitives restore, and give them back to war and all the woes before. Deep indignation swelled Saturnia's heart. And must I own, she said, my secret smart, what with more decence were in silence kept, and but for this unjust reproach had slept? Did God or man your favourite son advise with war unhoped the Latians to surprise? By fate, you boast, and by the gods' decree, he left his native land for Italy. Confess the truth. By mad Cassandra, more than heaven inspired, he sought a foreign shore. Did I persuade to trust his second Troy to the raw conduct of a beardless boy, with walls unfinished, which himself forsakes, and through the waves a wandering voyage takes? When have I urged him meanly to demand the Tuscan aid, and arm a quiet land? Did I or Iris give this mad advice, or made the fool himself the fatal choice? You think it hard the Latians should destroy with swords your Trojans, and with fires your Troy? Hard and unjust indeed for men to draw their native air, nor take a foreign law. That Turnus is permitted still to live, to whom his birth a god and goddess give. But yet is just and lawful for your line to drive their fields, and force with fraud to join. Realms, not your own, among your clans divide, and from the bridegroom tear the promised bride. Petition while you public arms prepare, pretend a peace, and yet provoke a war. 'Twas given to you your darling son to shroud, to draw the dastard from the fighting crowd, and for a man obtend an empty cloud. From flaming fleets you turned the fire away, and changed the ships to daughters of the sea. But is my crime? The Queen of Heaven offends, if she presume to save her suffering friends. Your son, not knowing what his foes decree, you say, is absent. Absent let him be. Yours is Cythera, yours the Cyprian towers, the soft recesses and the sacred bowers. Why do you then these needless arms prepare, and thus provoke a people prone to war? Did I with fire the Trojan town deface, or hinder from return your exiled race? Was I the cause of mischief, or the man whose lawless lust the fatal war began? Think on whose faith the adulterous youth relied, who promised, who procured the Spartan bride. When all the united states of Greece combined to purge the world of the perfidious kind, then was your time to fear the Trojan fate. Your quarrels and complaints are now too late. Thus Juno. Murmurs rise with mix'd applause, just as they favour or dislike the cause. So winds, when yet unfledged in woods they lie, in whispers first their tender voices try, then issue on the main with bellowing rage, and storms to trembling mariners presage. Then thus to both replied the imperial god, who shakes heaven's axles with his awful nod. When he begins, the silent senate stand with reverence, listening to the dread command. The clouds dispel, the winds their breath restrain, and the hush'd waves lie flatted on the main. Celestials, your attentive ears incline. Since, said the god, the Trojans must not join in wish'd alliance with the Latian line, since endless jarrings and immortal hate tend but to discompose our happy state, the war henceforward be resigned to fate. Each to his proper fortune stand or fall, equal and unconcerned I look on all. Rutulians, Trojans are the same to me, and both shall draw the lots their fates decree. Let these assault, if fortune be their friend, and if she favours those, let those defend. The fates will find their way. The Thunderer said, and shook the sacred honours of his head, attesting Styx, the inviolable flood, and the black regions of his brother god. Trembled the poles of heaven, and earth confessed the nod. This end the sessions had. The senate rise, and to his palace wait their sovereign through the skies. Meantime, intent upon their siege, the foes within their walls the Trojan host enclose. They wound, they kill, they watch at every gate, renew the fires, and urge their happy fate. The Aeneans wish in vain their wonted chief, hopeless of flight, more hopeless of relief. Thin on the towers they stand, and even those few, a feeble, fainting, and dejected crew. Yet in the face of danger some there stood, the two bold brothers of Sarpedon's blood, Asius and Acmon, both the Assaraci, young Haemon, and though young, resolved to die. With these were Clarus and Thymoetes joined, Tibris and Castor, both of Lycian kind. From Acmon's hands a rolling stone there came, so large it half deserved a mountain's name. Strong sinewed was the youth, and big of bone. His brother Mnestheus could not more have done, or the great father of the intrepid son. Some firebrands throw, some flights of arrows send, and some with darts and some with stones defend. Amid the press appears the beauteous boy, the care of Venus and the hope of Troy. His lovely face unarmed, his head was bare, in ringlets o'er his shoulders hung his hair. His forehead circled with a diadem, distinguished from the crowd, he shines a gem enchased in gold, or polished ivory set, amidst the meaner foil of sable jet. Nor Ismarus was wanting to the war, directing pointed arrows from afar, and death with poison armed, in Lydia born, where plenteous harvests the fat fields adorn, where proud Pactolus floats the fruitful lands, and leaves a rich manure of golden sands. There Capys, author of the Capuan name, and there was Mnestheus too, increased in fame, since Turnus from the camp he cast with shame. Thus mortal war was waged on either side. Meantime the hero cut the nightly tide, for, anxious, from Evander when he went, he sought the Tyrrhene camp, and Tarchon's tent. Exposed the cause of coming to the chief, his name and country told, and asked relief. Proposed the terms, his own small strength declared, what vengeance proud Mezentius had prepared, what Turnus, bold and violent, designed, then showed the slippery state of humankind and fickle fortune, warned him to beware, and to his wholesome counsel added prayer. Tarchon without delay the treaty signs, and to the Trojan troops the Tuscan joins. They soon set sail, nor now the fates withstand, their forces trusted with a foreign hand. Aeneas leads. Upon his stern appear 2 lions carved, which rising Ida bear, Ida to wandering Trojans ever dear. Under their grateful shade Aeneas sat, revolving war's events and various fate. His left young Pallas kept, fixed to his side, and oft of winds enquired, and of the tide, oft of the stars, and of their watery way, and what he suffered both by land and sea. Now, sacred sisters, open all your spring, the Tuscan leaders and their army sing, which followed great Aeneas to the war, their arms, their numbers, and their names declare. 1,000 youths brave Massicus obey, born in the Tiger through the foaming sea, from Asium brought, and Cosa by his care. For arms, light quivers, bows, and shafts they bear. Fierce Abas next, his men bright armour wore, his stern Apollo's golden statue bore. 600 Populonia sent along, all skilled in martial exercise and strong. 300 more for battle Ilva joins, an isle renowned for steel and unexhausted mines. Asylas on his prow the 3rd appears, who heaven interprets and the wandering stars. From offered entrails prodigies expounds, and peals of thunder with presaging sounds. 1,000 spears in warlike order stand, sent by the Pisans under his command. Fair Astur follows in the watery field, proud of his managed horse and painted shield. Gravisca, noisome from the neighbouring fen, and his own Caere sent 300 men, with those which Minio's fields and Pergi gave, all bred in arms, unanimous and brave. Thou, Muse, the name of Cinyras renew, and brave Cupavo followed but by few, whose helm confessed the lineage of the man, and bore with wings displayed a silver swan. Love was the fault of his famed ancestry, whose forms and fortunes in his ensigns fly. For Cycnus loved unhappy Phaeton, and sung his loss in poplar groves alone, beneath the sister shades, to soothe his grief. Heaven heard his song, and hastened his relief, and changed to snowy plumes his hoary hair, and winged his flight to chant aloft in air. His son Cupavo brushed the briny flood. Upon his stern a brawny centaur stood, who heaved a rock, and, threatening still to throw, with lifted hands alarmed the seas below. They seemed to fear the formidable sight, and rolled their billows on to speed his flight. Ocnus was next, who led his native train of hardy warriors through the watery plain, the son of Manto by the Tuscan stream, from whence the Mantuan town derives the name, an ancient city, but of mixed descent. 3 several tribes compose the government. 4 towns are under each, but all obey the Mantuan laws, and own the Tuscan sway. Hate to Mezentius armed 500 more, whom Mincius from his sire Benacus bore. Mincius with wreaths of reeds his forehead covered o'er. These grave Auletes leads, 100 sweep with stretching oars at once the glassy deep. Him and his martial train the Triton bears, high on his poop the sea-green god appears. Frowning he seems his crooked shell to sound, and at the blast the billows dance around. A hairy man above the waist he shows, a porpoise tail beneath his belly grows, and ends a fish. His breast the waves divides, and froth and foam augment the murmuring tides. Full 30 ships transport the chosen train for Troy's relief, and scour the briny main. Now was the world forsaken by the sun, and Phoebe half her nightly race had run. The careful chief, who never closed his eyes, himself the rudder holds, the sails supplies. A choir of Nereids met him on the flood, once his own galleys, hewn from Ida's wood, but now as many nymphs the sea they sweep, as rode before tall vessels on the deep. They know him from afar, and in a ring enclose the ship that bore the Trojan king. Cymodocea, whose voice excelled the rest, above the waves advanced her snowy breast. Her right hand stops the stern, Her left divides the curling ocean and corrects the tides. She spoke for all the choir, and thus began with pleasing words to warn the unknowing man. "Sleeps our loved lord? O goddess born, awake! Spread every sail, pursue your watery track, and haste your course. Your navy once were we, from Ida's height descending to the sea, till Turnus, as at anchor fixed we stood, presumed to violate our holy wood. Then, loosed from shore, we fled his fires profane, unwillingly we broke our master's chain, and since have sought you through the Tuscan main. The mighty mother changed our forms to these, and gave us life immortal in the seas. But young Ascanius in his camp distressed by your insulting foes is hardly pressed. The Arcadian horsemen and Etrurian host advance in order on the Latian coast. To cut their way the Daunian chief designs, before their troops can reach the Trojan lines. Thou, when the rosy morn restores the light, first arm thy soldiers for the ensuing fight. Thyself the fated sword of Vulcan wield, and bear aloft the impenetrable shield. Tomorrow's sun, unless my skill be vain, shall see huge heaps of foes in battle slain." Parting, she spoke, and with immortal force pushed on the vessel in her watery course, for well she knew the way. Impelled behind, the ship flew forward and outstripped the wind. The rest make up. Unknowing of the cause, the chief admires their speed, and happy omens draws. Then thus he prayed, and fixed on heaven his eyes. "Hear thou, great mother of the deities, with turrets crowned, on Ida's holy hill fierce tigers, reined and curbed, obey thy will. Firm thy own omens, lead us on to fight, and let thy Phrygians conquer in thy right." He said no more, and now renewing day had chased the shadows of the night away. He charged the soldiers with preventing care their flags to follow and their arms prepare, warned of the ensuing fight, and bade 'em hope the war. Now his lofty poop he viewed below, his camp encompassed and the enclosing foe. His blazing shield embraced he held on high, the camp receive the sign, and with loud shouts reply. Hope arms their courage. From their towers they throw their darts with double force, and drive the foe. Thus, at the signal given, the cranes arise before the stormy south, and blacken all the skies. King Turnus wondered at the fight renewed, till, looking back, the Trojan fleet he viewed. The seas with swelling canvas covered o'er, and the swift ships descending on the shore. The Latians saw from far, with dazzled eyes, the radiant crest that seemed in flames to rise, and dart diffusive fires around the field, and the keen glittering of the golden shield. Thus threatening comets, when by night they rise, shoot sanguine streams, and sadden all the skies. So Sirius, flashing forth sinister lights, pale humankind with plagues and with dry famine fright. Yet Turnus, with undaunted mind, is bent to man the shores and hinder their descent, and thus awakes the courage of his friends. "What you so long have wish'd, kind fortune sends. In ardent arms to meet the invading foe, you find, and find him at advantage now. Yours is the day, you need but only dare. Your swords will make you masters of the war. Your sires, your sons, your houses, and your lands, and dearest wives, are all within your hands. Be mindful of the race from whence you came, and emulate in arms your father's fame. Now take the time, while staggering yet they stand, with feet unfirm, and prepossess the strand. Fortune befriends the bold." No more he said, but balanced whom to leave and whom to lead. Then these elects, the landing to prevent, and those he leaves to keep the city pent. Meantime the Trojan sends his troops ashore. Some are by boats exposed, by bridges more. With labouring oars they bear along the strand, where the tide languishes, and leap aland. Tarchon observes the coast with careful eyes, and where no ford he finds, no water fries, nor billows with unequal murmurs roar, but smoothly slide along and swell the shore. That course he steer'd, and thus he gave command. Here ply your oars, and at all hazard land. Force on the vessel, that her keel may wound this hated soil, and furrow hostile ground. Let me securely land, I ask no more. Then sink my ships, or shatter on the shore. This fiery speech inflames his fearful friends. They tug at every oar, and every stretcher bends. They run their ships aground, the vessels knock, thus forced ashore, and tremble with the shock. Tarchon's alone was lost, that stranded stood, stuck on a bank, and beaten by the flood. She breaks her back, the loosened sides give way, and plunge the Tuscan soldiers in the sea. Their broken oars and floating planks withstand their passage while they labour to the land, and ebbing tides bear back upon the uncertain sand. Now Turnus leads his troops without delay, advancing to the margin of the sea. The trumpets sound. Aeneas first assailed the clowns new raised and raw, and soon prevailed. Great Theron fell, an omen of the fight. Great Theron, large of limbs, of giant height. He first in open field defied the prince, but armour scaled with gold was no defence against the fated sword, which opened wide his plated shield, and pierced his naked side. Next Lycas fell, who, not like others born, was from his wretched mother ripped and torn. Sacred, O Phoebus, from his birth to thee, for his beginning life from biting steel was free. Not far from him was Gyas laid along, of monstrous bulk, with Chryseus fierce and strong. Vain bulk and strength, for when the chief assailed, nor valour nor Herculean arms availed, nor their famed father wont in war to go with great Alcides when he toiled below. The noisy Pharos next received his death. Aeneas writhed his dart, and stopped his bawling breath. Then wretched Sidon had received his doom, who courted Clytius in his beardless bloom, and sought with lust obscene polluted joys. The Trojan sword had cured his love of boys, had not his 7 bold brethren stopped the course of the fierce champions with united force. 7 darts were thrown at once, and some rebound from his bright shield, some on his helmet sound. The rest had reached him, but his mother's care prevented those, and turned aside in air. The prince then called Achates to supply the spears that knew the way to victory. Those fatal weapons which inured to blood in Grecian bodies under Ilium stood, not one of those my hand shall toss in vain against our foes on this contended plain, he said, then seized a mighty spear, and threw, which, winged with fate, through Maion's buckler flew, pierced all the brazen plates, and reached his heart. He staggered with intolerable smart. Alcanor saw, and reached, but reached in vain, his helping hand, his brother to sustain. A second spear, which kept the former course, from the same hand, and sent with equal force, his right arm pierced, and, holding on, bereft his use of both, and pinioned down his left. Then Numitor from his dead brother drew the ill-omened spear, and at the Trojan threw. Preventing fate directs the lance away, which, glancing, only marked Achates' thigh. In pride of youth the Sabine Clausus came, and from afar at Dryops took his aim. The spear flew hissing through the middle space, and pierced his throat, directed at his face. It stopped at once the passage of his wind, and the free soul to flitting air resigned. His forehead was the first that struck the ground. Life-blood and life rushed mingled through the wound. He slew 3 brothers of the Borean race, and 3 whom Ismarus, their native place, had sent to war, but all the sons of Thrace. Helesus next the bold Aurunci leads. The son of Neptune to his aid succeeds, conspicuous on his horse. On either hand these fight to keep, and those to win, the land. With mutual blood the Ausonian soil is dyed, while on its borders each their claim decide. As wintry winds, contending in the sky, with equal force of lungs their titles try. They rage, they roar, the doubtful rack of heaven stands without motion, and the tide undriven. each bent to conquer, neither side to yield. They long suspend the fortune of the field. Both armies thus perform what courage can, foot set to foot, and mingled man to man. But in another part the Arcadian horse with ill success engaged the Latin force. For, where the impetuous torrent, rushing down huge craggy stones and rooted trees, had thrown, they left their coursers, and, unused to fight on foot, were scattered in a shameful flight. Pallas, who with disdain and grief had viewed his foes pursuing, and his friends pursued, used threatenings mixed with prayers, his last resource, with these to move their minds, and those to fire their force. "Which way, companions? Whither would you run? By you yourselves, and mighty battles won, by my great sire, by his established name, and early promise of my future fame, by my youth, emulous of equal right to share his honours, shun ignoble flight. Trust not your feet, your hands must hew way through yon black body and that thick array. 'Tis through that forward path that we must come, there lies our way, and that our passage home. Nor powers above, nor destinies below oppress our arms. With equal strength we go, with mortal hands, to meet a mortal foe. See on what foot we stand, a scanty shore, the sea behind, our enemies before. No passage left, unless we swim the main, or, forcing these, the Trojan trenches gain." This said, he strode with eager haste along, and bore amidst the thickest of the throng. Largus, the first he met with fate to foe, had heaved a stone of mighty weight to throw. Stooping, the spear descended on his chine, just where the bone distinguished either loin. It stuck so fast, so deeply buried lay, that scarce the victor forced the steel away. Hisbon came on, but while he moved too slow to wish to revenge, the prince prevents his blow. For, warding his at once he press'd and plunged the fatal weapon in his breast. Then lewd Anchemolus he laid in dust, who stained his stepdam's bed with impious lust. And after him the Daucian twins were slain, Laris and Thymbrus, on the Latian plain. So wondrous like in feature, shape, and size, as caused an error in their parents' eyes, grateful mistake. But soon the sword decides the nice distinction, and their fate divides. For Thymbrus' head was lopped, and Laris' hand, dismember'd, sought its owner on the strand. The trembling fingers yet the falchion strain, and threaten still the intended stroke in vain. Now, to renew the charge, the Arcadians came. Sight of such acts, and sense of honest shame, and grief with anger mix'd, their minds inflame. Then with a casual blow was Rhoeteus slain, who chanced, as Pallas threw, to cross the plain. The flying spear was after Ilus sent, but Rhoeteus happened on a death unmeant. From Teuthrus and from Tyres while he fled, the lance athwart his body laid him dead. Roll'd from his chariot with a mortal wound, and intercepted fate, he spurn'd the ground, as when in summer welcome winds arise, the watchful shepherd to the forest flies, and fires the midmost plants. Contagion spreads, and catching flames infect the neighbouring heads. Around the forest flies the furious blast, and all the leafy nation sinks at last, and Vulcan rides in triumph o'er the waste. The pastor, pleased with his dire victory, beholds the satiate flames in sheets ascend the sky. So Pallas' troops their scattered strength unite, and pouring on their foes their prince delight. Halesus came, fierce with desire of blood, but first collected in his arms he stood. Advancing then, he plied the spear so well, Ladon, Demodocus, and Pheres fell. Around his head he toss'd his glittering brand, and from Strymonius hew'd his better hand, held up to guard his throat. Then hurl'd a stone at Thoas' ample front, and pierced the bone. It struck beneath the space of either eye, and blood and mingled brains together fly. Deep skill'd in future fates, Halesus' sire did with the youth to lonely groves retire. But when the father's mortal race was run, dire destiny laid hold upon the son, and hauled him to the war, to find, beneath the Evandrian spear, a memorable death. Pallas the encounter seeks, but ere he throws, to Tuscan Tiber thus address'd his vows: "O sacred stream, direct my flying dart, and give to pass the proud Halesus' heart. His arms and spoils thy holy oak shall bear." Pleas'd with the bribe, the god receiv'd his pray'r, for while his shield protects a friend distress'd, the dart came driving on, and pierced his breast. But Lausus, no small portion of the war, permits not panic fear to reign too far, caused by the death of so renown'd a knight, but by his own example cheers the fight. Fierce Abas first he slew, Abas, the stay of Trojan hopes, and hindrance of the day. The Phrygian troops escaped the Greeks in vain, they and their mix'd allies now load the plain. To the rude shock of war both armies came, their leaders equal, and their strength the same. The rear so press'd the front, they could not wield their angry weapons to dispute the field. Here Pallas urges on, and Lausus there. Of equal youth and beauty both appear, but both by fate forbid to breathe their native air. Their congress in the field great Jove withstands, both doom'd to fall, but fall by greater hands. End of Book 10, Part 1.